probably the Premier League in England. Supposedly it was like a match that had gotten canceled, that the goalkeeper didn't realize it was still standing out there in the goal. It's from back in like the early, like probably like 100 years ago.
You can't blame that.
All right, good evening. I would like to call to order the meeting of the Middletown City Planning Commission for today, Wednesday, November 12th. If you could please call the roll.
Will Parsons,
Here?
AJ Mintel,
Present.
Roger Daniel,
Here.
Nancy Griffith,
Here.
David Cash,
Here.
Tara Ramsey,
Here.
and Gabe Shaneline.
Here.
All right, if you would, please join me in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, first up, we have approval for the meeting minutes from our last meeting, October 8th. Do any members have any requested changes or questions?
I didn't get those to you.
Correct, my bad. In which case, we will push those to next meeting then. All right, before we get started, I do see we have a fairly good crowd. Would it be pertinent to go ahead and do swearings in now, or do we want to wait?
That's good.
Okay. If you plan to give public testimony this evening, if you would, please stand and raise your right hand, and you will be sworn in. Then when the time comes, when you do come up and give your testimony, please still identify yourself and let us know that you were sworn in previously.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Thank you.
All right, thank you all. The first item for tonight is a public hearing. This is a major amendment to a plan development. It's a request by applicant and property owner Jordan Wallace of Wallace Ventures to amend the approved plan development located at the northwest corner of Market Avenue and Union Road. All right, Ms. Benninger, could you please take us through it?
Yes, so this is to revise the site plan by rearranging the proposed buildings and constructing a public street in the development. Previously, the driveways, for lack of a better term, were proposed to be private. The proposed change to the approved plan development is considered a major change according to Chapter 122604 F1B of the Middletown Development Code, only requiring Planning Commission approval. This does not rise to the level of City Council approval as well. So the subject parcels are a total of just over 14.5 acres according to the Warren County Auditor's website. And this is in a planned development district. This was rezoned following the approval in 22, I believe. The final development plan was approved on November 9th of 2022. It has been amended effective March 21st of 25, and there have been 2 time limit extensions between the approval of final development plan and when development begins by Planning Commission. The currently approved plan proposes a total of 314 units within 9 buildings that range in heights of 3 to 4 stories. On your screen is the currently approved site plan. And then getting into staff analysis, we already went over how this rises to the level of a major change for Planning Commission approval, but not City Council. So then getting into subdivision design streets in Chapter 1222. Based on the application submitted, the applicant wishes to construct a public street within the development. The City of Middletown requires any new local street to have a minimum right-of-way of 50 feet. The applicant proposes a right-of-way of 53 feet wide. Then getting into how it aligns with our City of Middletown Manual of Design for Public Improvements. This is within our Public Works Department, but we do reference this in the Middletown Development Code. New local streets shall have street trees installed with a maximum separation distance of 40 feet. The proposed tree lawn may be reduced to allow for wider sidewalks. Based on the application submitted, the applicant proposes to construct a local street with a width of 29 feet from curb to curb, expanding to a width of 41 feet from curb to curb where there's proposed parallel parking. The applicant intends to alternate every street lighting and street trees every 20 feet for compliance with the provisions for local streets within the business center subdistrict. And this is important because while this is in the planned development district, it was originally in the BCH. Getting into off-street parking requirements. The Table 1218-1 number of off-street parking space requirements requires 1.5 parking spaces per dwelling unit for multifamily dwellings. The applicant has proposed 584 parking spaces with 8 garages in the currently approved site plan. In the proposed major amendment application, the applicant proposes 547 parking spaces, of which 467 standard 90-degree off-street parking spaces will be provided, and 80 parallel parking spaces will be provided on the public street. This exceeds the city's requirements by 76 parking spaces. Further detailed plans were not received to review compliance of parking stall and aisle dimensions. Next, and this was not in your staff packet, so I apologize. Getting into sidewalks. Based on the site plan submitted, the applicant proposes a 6-foot wide sidewalk on both sides of the new proposed public street, a foot wider than the required 5-foot width. The submitted site plan does not appear to show a proposed sidewalk along the frontages of Union Road and Market Avenue, connecting to the existing sidewalk on the northwest intersection of Union and Market. So getting into what we require for new sidewalks. For development projects outside of a subdivision, new public sidewalks constructed to meet the City of Middletown standards identified in that Public Works Department document shall be required along the street frontage of any lot being developed when the following conditions exist. The development includes new construction on a vacant lot or complete redevelopment of an existing principal building. There is no public sidewalk along one or more of the public street rights of way adjacent to the lot. A public sidewalk exists in the public right of way on the lot adjacent to the lot being developed, and there is adequate existing right of way for the public sidewalk. Here is a Google map screenshot of the intersection of Union and Market, showing existing sidewalks on each corner. Getting into chapter 12:16, so our landscaping requirements. The applicant has not submitted a landscaping plan to show compliance with chapter 12:16 with the proposed major amendment. Getting into the future land use, this property remains in the employment mixed use area where residential is a secondary use envisioned for this property. Additionally, this property is in the Renaissance Development Opportunity Area. And on the screen before you is the proposed major amendment showing that new public street with the rearrangement of the buildings. No public comments have been received via phone or email. Fire department had a few comments. Based on the revised site plan, access to the apartment building in the center of the development, above or north of the pool, may be challenging with the layout of the parking lot and turning radii of the responding fire trucks. Drive aisle widths were not submitted for the parking lots to understand if a 50-foot long fire truck can maneuver the parking lots during an emergency response. At minimum, the drive aisle should be 24 feet in width to accommodate a fire truck in operation. A fire hydrant must be within 100 feet of each fire department connection for each building in the development. Public Works has stated a stormwater management plan will be required. And during a winter storm event, cars parked parallel on the public street are likely to be snowed in as the city plows the road. As for staff recommendation, should the Planning Commission move to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions be included in the approval. Applicant construct a 5-foot wide sidewalk along the Market Avenue and Union Road frontages, connecting to the existing sidewalk at the intersection of Market and Union in accordance with Chapter 12, 1807. Applicant be in full compliance of Chapter 12, 1608, landscaping requirements for vehicular use areas, even if that means a reduction in the proposed parking in the site plan. Applicant shall be in full compliance with the fire department regulations as it relates to Ohio Fire Code. And that will conclude my staff report.
Thank you. Does the board have any questions that can be directed to staff at this time?
So I didn't get the chance to review the previous, the email from like earlier today where you sent the previous meeting notes to show the previous site plans. Were any of the comments from the different departments in the city, were any of those like applicable to this as well? Did you see like, here, I guess a better way to put it is, are there any concerns that they had with that site that have now been like reopened with this that haven't been addressed? Like,
Immediately looking at the fire department's comments, the drive aisle should be at least 24 feet in width. I know in the previous approved site plan, the outlined red area is marked 24-foot fire lane. However, I cannot confirm in terms of the parking lots if there were to be an event in a parking lot that they needed to respond to. I cannot speak to the other items at this time.
thank you.
But the last ones under Public Works, because that wasn't a public street, Public Works wouldn't have been moving snowplows through there at that time.
Do we have any other questions that can be addressed to staff? No? I had one. We mentioned not knowing within the parking, I believe it was the amount of space. So is that folded into the fire department's, when you look at the staff recommendation, is that all kind of together there? Because that was mentioned previous, and then the fire department mentioned wanting to see that, so that it was in that recommendation. Okay.
So if they have to be in compliance with the Ohio Fire Code, however, I'm pretty sure that our parking, so Chapter 1218, it aligns with the Ohio Fire Code, if I recall correctly.
Okay. Thank you. All right, if we have nothing else at this time, we'll move forward with the public hearing. If you would like to come forward and speak in favor, please do so at this time. Please.
Okay, we've discussed this one before about the necessity to have density in our city. If you've noticed, I drive around a lot because that's my job. One of my titles is journeyman. And I have noticed in other cities and townships this whole situation in larger scale. This is in our east side corridor. And this will give an opportunity to bring more citizens or where people can start. Some people start in the rental world, and sometimes they want to stay there because they don't want to cut grass or shovel snow. This is going to be close to our Renaissance, right across the street from the atrium, so there might be employment opportunities. Down the way, we have acreage that potentially could be used for industrial and manufacturing. So again, we just need to consider that this density is a necessity in our city that we need to go forward, because along with this, we're also trying to make more density even in our downtown Middletown area, but this will help our east side area as we continue to grow as a city. So I just want to say that this is one of those necessities that we need, and as you can see, they're working with our staff and on the concern on the fire department to just make sure. I believe even Christo on the Lincoln Heights, they did a study to see if that, the main thing is the big truck, because it is three levels that they have to be able to get the ladder truck in. Nice thing is what you have a fire station that's less than a half-mile away, and eventually you're going to have a remote police station about 1 mile away. So that also helped draw, hopefully, these folks to want to rent these places. And again, this might be a starting situation or a situation where people want to rent, and we want to bring more people into our city to live here, then hopefully work here, and also gain entertainment here. So that's why I would like to speak for this development.
Sorry to interrupt. John Roach, Council for the City. Sir, just for the record, can you state your name and confirm that you were sworn in?
Councilman Paul Horn, City of Middletown. I'm just messing up all night. Yes, and I was sworn in.
Thank you, sir. If there's anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward. All right, having no response, I will now ask if there is anyone wishing to come forward and speak in opposition. Please do so. Having no response, I will then close the public hearing and we'll move to deliberation.
I did look up the drive aisle widths required. So for parking angle, so 90 degrees, if it is a one-way parking lot, the drive aisle width is a minimum requirement of 22 feet. Two-way, it is 24 feet. So if it is proposed to be 24 feet, cars can move in both directions, it will be in compliance.
Very good.
I mean, the commission, I can't believe it was last meeting or the meeting before, but we did grant this applicant another time extension. So I think that obviously we're interested in seeing this being built. It's not every day that 314 homes are proposed to being built in Middletown. So those are kind of my thoughts on that.
I would agree. I think especially based off of the staff recommendation, seems very logical. As we were going through the report, those were the first things that were sticking out to me in my mind, that we would have that as part of our approval. The fact that as we went through the packet, it did seem that most of the items that we did have the firm numbers on, the applicant was not only meeting but exceeding everything. That would give me confidence that they would be able and willing to do so with the remaining items. So personally, I would be good with approval based off of the stipulations provided by staff. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions outlined in the staff recommendation attached.
All right, Mr. Parsons,
Yes.
Mr. Mintel,
Yes.
Mr. Daniel,
Yes.
Ms. Griffith,
Yes.
Mr. Cash,
Yes.
Ms. Ramsey, and Mr. Shainline.
Yes.
All right, that brings us to our next item. This is another public hearing for a conditional use. This is a request by applicant Middletown AD1 on behalf of property owner John Westheimer for conditional use approval to allow for manufacturing and production with caustic or hazardous materials at the approximate 26-acre parcel known as Q, followed by a good number of numbers you can see up there on your screen there. Ms. Benninger, if you could please take us through this.
Yes, so this parcel is located in our I-2 General Industrial Zoning District, where manufacturing and production with caustic or hazardous materials is a conditional use according to Table 1204-3 of the Middletown Development Code, which requires Planning Commission review and approval. Getting into property background, the subject parcel is a total of just over 29.5 acres according to the Butler County Auditor's website. The property is a greenfield, undeveloped parcel located at the end of Made Industrial Drive within the Made Industrial Park. According to the United States Department of Transportation's National Pipeline Mapping System, there is a gas line, gas transmission pipeline, as well as a hazardous liquid pipeline that runs through the subject parcel. The purpose of the I-2 zoning district is to accommodate a broad range of industrial activities, diverse in products, operational techniques, and size which have a greater potential impact on their environment and surrounding neighborhoods than those permitted in the I-1 zoning district. On your screen, you can see the printout from the National Pipeline Mapping System. If you locate Todd Hunter Road on the map and look to the north of it, you can see where the city of Middletown's dotted municipal boundaries are, and just intersecting that parcel, almost in half, hamburger style, is going to be where that gas transmission pipeline is located. Getting into the surrounding zoning, as I referenced earlier, this parcel directly abuts the city of Monroe. So where the western parcel boundary for this parcel is also our municipal boundary, and just on the other side is the city of Monroe. So surrounding this property on the south, north, and west is going to be rurally zoned or suburban zoned residential zoning districts within the city of Monroe. And then to the east of this property is within the city of Middletown, and it is also zoned I-2 General Industrial District. Getting into the definitions here first, manufacturing and production with caustic or hazardous material is defined as an establishment that is defined as manufacturing and production with heavy or outdoors use above, which in the zoning code it is above, but that also utilizes caustic or hazardous materials as determined by the Development Code Administrator. Manufacturing and production, heavy or outdoors, is more heavy in nature, or can also occur outdoors as compared to those that would occur solely indoors, and there may be potential to produce noise, dust, glare outdoors, or vibration beyond its lot line. So getting into the proposed use, the applicant proposes to use the property to develop a food and dairy waste to renewable energy project. The proposed project will utilize approximately 26 acres of the subject parcel, include an organics preparation phase used to break down food and beverage waste to prepare the waste for an anaerobic digestion, an anaerobic digester where food and cow manure are combined in a tank and heated under anaerobic conditions, which produces biomethane and other outputs through a process called anaerobic digestion. A digestate solid separation facility, liquid fertilizer holding and closed storage tanks, and a piping and equipment necessary to refine and distribute natural gas into the existing natural gas distribution pipeline located underneath on the parcel. Based on the 4 steps provided in the applicant's project description, the proposed use aligns with the manufacturing and production with caustic or hazardous use type. I pulled this quick infographic off of the Ohio EPA's website, and through the review of this, the applicant would also be subject to the following Ohio EPA regulations, seeking permits from the Division of Surface Water as well as Division of Air Pollution Control. Here is our table 1204-3. And this really goes into that conditional uses may be subject to use-specific standards outlined in table or chapter 1204, part 9, which are as follows. As part of any review, the applicant shall provide the city a list of noxious matter or chemicals used during the manufacturing process and document the safety precautions that will be used to prevent potentially hazardous chemical reactions or contamination. If the applicant can demonstrate that due to the specific types of chemicals, matter, or processes, that there is no potential for hazardous reactions or contaminant, the Development Code Administrator shall have the authority to review the use as manufacturing production indoors or as a manufacturing and production heavy or outdoors use type. Lastly, all buildings or structures that contain these activities shall be set back a minimum of 600 feet from all residential lot lines and 300 feet from all other adjacent lot lines. The applicant has stated the following in response to use-specific standard A. Chemicals used during the biogas process are ferric chloride and antifoam. Both materials are non-hazardous, and there's further descriptions on the two identified chemicals and materials. The applicant did not identify biogas or the components of the produced biogas on the list of noxious matter or chemicals. The applicant did not submit documentation of the safety precautions that will be used to prevent potentially hazardous chemical reactions of contamination. The applicant submitted a site plan in response to the use-specific standard C. In a meeting with city staff, the applicant noted the structures involved in production and refinement of biogas includes digesters 1 and 2, biogas upgrader, and M&R station. In the submitted site plan, the applicant also provides the setbacks of the flare. Setbacks were not provided for the structures involved in such activities from the southern property lines. Residential lots are located on the northern, western, and southern. The southern one is across public right-of-way, Todd Hunter, edges of the subject parcel. The setbacks of the buildings or structures containing hazardous material are set back approximately ranging from 100 feet to 280 feet from the northern, western, and eastern property lines, encroaching on the required setbacks of 600 feet from all residential lot lines and 300 feet from all other adjacent lot lines. Here is the site plan showing the setbacks, and I did get a bit closer for your review. As for landscaping, landscape buffers should only be required along lot lines that are adjacent to lots located within Middletown municipal boundaries or are located adjacent to residential subdivisions, regardless if the subdivision is within Middletown municipal boundaries. The properties to the south and west are not within the city of Middletown's municipal boundaries, but however, Butler County Auditor's website identifies the residential parcels to be platted. The applicant proposes to buffer the southern border of the subject parcel with 9 Norway spruce evergreen trees, 3 Ohio buckeye overstory trees, 3 American linden overstory trees, 12 gray dogwood shrubs, and 25 shrubs, I'm not going to say that name other than Allegheny, in the 2 open areas that are not currently buffered with existing vegetation. To the west that exists. Oh, I'm sorry. Based on the site plan submitted, the applicant does not intend to disturb the existing vegetation to the west that exists between the proposed development and the existing residential parcels. I did get a little bit closer here on the updated landscaping plan that shows that proposed landscaping buffering. Getting into site development standards, the application is in compliance with the standards set forth in the aforementioned chapters, so 120410 as well as 1218 parking, chapters of the Middletown Development Code. I do want to note that the design of the digesters is still in production, and there may need to be a waiver applied by Planning Commission, if not by Planning Commission, by Board of Zoning Appeals to allow for the structure to exceed the height of 50 feet. If it goes beyond that, 10% administrative waiver. Looking at Chapter 1208, Outdoor Lighting Standards, the applicant has not submitted a lighting plan for compliance review of the aforementioned chapter. And then the architectural standards, the proposed structures are exempt from architectural standards for non-residential buildings as the subject parcel is located in the I-2 zoning district. Getting into our comprehensive plan, the subject property is within the Todd Hunter Special Interest Area land use category, which has the following vision. The vision for the Todd Hunter Special Interest Area is an emerging employment district with attractive office, high-tech, industrial, large-scale commercial, and medical uses that support current industrial uses already in the area. Here is a page straight from our comprehensive plan that identifies the proposed uses that would suit this area, site development, as well as building aspirations. This is also located within the city's Green Tree Oxford State Road Development Opportunity Area, which is just the broader land use division. Public notice, I did receive 3 comments from surrounding property owners, 2 phone calls and 1 via email. All property owners have discussed concern regarding a manufacturing and production facility that will produce potentially hazardous material operating in close proximity to residential dwellings, as well as conservation efforts for surrounding areas. In addition to the concern expressed, one property inquired on the proposed timeline of construction and operation of the facility, as well as the proposed height of the storage tanks, so that's going to be on the southern half of that parcel, that will be closest to the residential properties to the south of the subject parcel. Getting into other department comments, Health Department has stated the city should be mindful of the pollutants our current and future industries are releasing into the air, ground, and water to ensure public health is protected. What sounds can be expected for surrounding property owners and businesses. Community and Economic Development Department has stated, ensure all waste in the tipping area does not leave the facility and litter the subject property or surrounding properties. Fire Department has stated, is there a comparable plant in our area that does a similar operation? Are there plans for future expansion? The city has air monitoring systems in the general vicinity of the area. What emissions are expected to occur at this site? Evacuation plans and Tier 3 annual reporting will be required for the facility. It will also be required that the company submit a list of potentially hazardous materials and chemicals to the city to keep on file. Specify third party as it relates to waste hauling. How will waste arrive? Can the public utilize the facility? How will cow manure arrive? Police Department has inquired, what are the proposed hours of operation? What are the proposed hours that trucks will be arriving and departing from the facility? Will staff be on site at all times? What are the expected number of trucks per day for the facility? Yankee Road is not a large road and it currently sees a heavy amount of semi-truck and similar commercial vehicle usage with the existing industrial businesses in the area. Public Works Department has stated further requirement is needed to determine if a traffic impact study will be required. A stormwater pollution prevention plan will be required, as well as information on discharge into the city's sewage. Information is needed in regards to expected water and sewage usage. What are the contingency plans for the delivered waste in the event the facility is out of operation for an extended period of time? Can the public expect to see waste stored outdoors? What waste will be accepted at the facility? Solely packaged waste or also unpackaged bulk waste? Getting into staff recommendation, prior to approval, staff recommends Planning Commission require the complete submittal for compliance with Chapter 120409E2A for review, as well as the consideration of the waiver of setback requirements, as stated in Chapter 120409E2C. Should the Planning Commission move to approve the application, staff recommends the following conditions be attached to the approval. I'm not going to read those since we are a bit ahead of the game here. Here is the review criteria for conditional use approval. Additional criteria and conditions. The time limit. Should this be approved, there will need to be consideration as well for a time limit extension, as the permitting process and construction drawings will take the applicant quite a while. And lastly, the appeals section for any entity claiming to be injured or aggrieved by final action of the Planning Commission. And that will conclude my staff report.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from the board that can be addressed to staff at this time?
Can you elaborate on the time limit, the thing that you were just talking about, just a little?
Yes. So the when I had spoken with the surrounding property owner, there was questions on what is the time limit or time frame for this project. When we met with the applicant, I believe last week, following Planning Commission's approval, the drawings of the development would take place, and then they would start to seek Ohio EPA approval as well as local approval. That would take up to 6 months. Construction slated to begin in April of 2027, and then slated to open April in 2028. And there would be like a 6-month period where the digester tanks are going to be brought online and conditioned and calibrated. So, beginning full operation day-to-day by October of 28, I believe. But nonetheless, the time limit that would be needed because conditional use approval expires after a year, either a time limit extension with the conditional use to seek zoning permit approval or extending that time limit approval for the zoning permit itself.
So just to break it down, essentially the process for the further planning and seeking the approval from other like organizations and oversight, it will be long enough that we're gonna pretty much have to like give them more time by attaching that to the approval. Or?
Yes, I think it's easiest to have the conditional use approval extended.
Okay, thank you.
Claire, I have a question. Appreciate all the information. I see the National Pipeline Mapping System, and in other dealings we've had to in other neighborhoods, we've received information of where, for lack of better words, an underground aquifer is, underground rivers are run. And I'll give a quick example. When I was working and we did the Edgewood High School project, there's a major underground river that goes right underneath that, and anytime we had an accident, we had to do something quickly because Miller Brewery actually fed into that river. And we're seeing some concerns about citizens, and I'm not, because this is monitored with the Ohio EPA, and I'm sure they work in line with the federal EPA, I would like to know if there is anything underground here that we're aware of.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that these folks are, that this is we'll talk more after the presentation and everything else, but I want to make sure that all the information is given, and that if there's a potential that we had to have a work plan in place. And it was small. It was, if we were digging and the hydraulics in our equipment broke, we had to have an emergency kit immediately. And that's just because this was Trenton, this was Miller Brewery, that was our major business, and they want to know potential of it leaking down in there. I thought it was a little excessive, but it was part of the rules of doing the job. So I'm sure they have a plan in place of just in case, but they should also know that if there is anything running underneath here. The property I'm talking about is the Amanda area. There was a claim that there's stuff going on there that wasn't, and so somehow someone at staff level has maps of where our water goes underground. So that might be something for information for both parties to know that information.
Yes, so there is an existing gas transmission pipeline which the applicant is proposing to directly inject biogas that has been refined into. That is why they're here. It's a conditional use. But then as for receiving a plan for precautions or how they're going to respond, the city has not received that to date.
So Claire, the setback lines, clearly setback lines are being, the required 600 and 300 setback lines. If this were to be approved, there's not a variance that's required. This would just be part of the process of approving the conditional use.
Planning Commission has the ability to waive use. Planning Commission has the ability to waive or modify various requirements. So that could be covered under your approval. That can also be, if you do not include that in your approval, it would have to be a variance approval.
Claire, could you, pardon me, as part of the Todd Hunter Special Interest Area, it mentioned within the vision there being high-tech industrial. Can you touch on what some of those general uses might kind of be?
You're typically looking at more of that advanced manufacturing. I am not fully versed in industrial and maybe more of that development and research type. So what you see off of 75 with the Cleveland Cliffs research and development facility. But as for outside of more futuristic industrial uses, it's broad.
Kind of talking like data centers, things like that, or?
I really don't know.
Okay.
I can't answer that. Since I don't know really when data centers became a land use,
Sure.
I can't recall if that was really truly a thing in 2022 when this was developed, or if it's more of a new emerging development.
That makes sense. Do we have any other questions for staff before we proceed? No? Okay, very good. We'll prepare to open the public hearing. Before I do so, first off, I want to thank the number of people who came out tonight. It's always nice to see people come and wishing to take part of the process. I know it helps us when we deliberate and make up our minds. Would remind everyone to, as you can, to please try and keep your comments concise. And also remind you that while you're up here, it can be a little odd, but it's not so much a conversation for the whole room, but between us, if there are questions that need to be directed to, say, the applicant, those can be noted during your time, and then we can have time after everyone has come up to speak, wherein the applicant can come back and address those concerns. However, this would not really be the time to come up and then have a direct one-to-one conversation with the applicant. All right, that being said, I'd like to open up the public hearing for this conditional use. To start, if you would like to speak in favor, please come forward and identify yourself.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and members of the commission. We're very glad to be here, and I want to echo your thank you to the public for public engagement and citizen engagement being here tonight. That's always a very positive thing and a reflection on the community very well. My name is Majid Makhlouf. I'm a partner with Burns, Ochsner, Greenberger, and I am Ohio legal counsel to the applicant Middletown AD 1 on zoning and land use matters. My plan tonight is not to have you listen to lawyers, so I'm just basically here to be more of master of ceremonies, but I just wanted to give you the layout of our intended presentation, and obviously I'm here for follow-up, and I may come up at the end to wrap things up. But basically, we have 4 individuals who plan to testify before you tonight. Steve Laliberty, he's the Vice President of Development. He will begin. Anna Lee May, she's the Development Manager with the applicant. We also have John Penshorn, who is the Project Engineer with Stantec Engineering. And we also have with us Professor Greg Soltis, a professor at Cleveland State University School of Urban Planning, who addresses these issues and has a presentation for you on that project. We also wanted to be very respectful of the commission and the citizens in case there's any questions. We brought every subject matter expert that we could think of that any questions may come up. So we have 7 other individuals in the room. In case there are questions, we don't plan on having them do any presentation, but if in case any questions come up, they're here to answer those questions. And with that, I will turn it over to Steve. I just actually want to address a few things very quickly. Is a clarification that our operation is completely indoor. I know there's the caustic and hazardous materials. I think our position has always been that we don't fall into that, but we're very happy to go through the conditional use process. With respect to the deviations or amendments to the requirements, we asked the Planning Commission to grant those with respect to the setbacks and with respect to anything needed with the height. I think the code wisely recognizes that it's different when you have something as a matter of right, granted as a matter of right, that you could do it administratively. If there are variances, you go to the Board of Zoning Appeals. But when you're doing a conditional use, the Planning Commission is looking at the entirety of the application, the site plan, everything of that nature. So the grant of the deviations would be very appropriate for the Planning Commission to do. And then obviously the issue of the timeline, we're trying to make sure not to fall into a trap of expiration. But with that, I will turn it over to Steve LaLiberty to commence the presentation. And there's a PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you, Majid. Good afternoon, commissioners.
I'm going to jump in real quick before we get started. Just please state your name, your address, and just confirm for the record you're sworn in. We're making a record of everything that's done tonight, so just please confirm you're sworn in.
Yep, Steve Liberty, Vice President of Development. Address is 133 Boston Post Road, Weston, Massachusetts. And yes, I've been sworn in.
My name is Annalee May. I'm a development manager at Vanguard Renewables, address 133 Boston Post Road, Weston, Massachusetts. And I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
All right, so as Majid said, we came with quite the crew today to make sure we could answer everyone's questions, and so we'll try to move pretty quickly through this presentation and leave plenty of time for follow-ups. Alrighty, so we'll start off with who Vanguard Renewables is. Vanguard was founded in 2014. We're an owner, operator, and developer of anaerobic digestion systems across the U.S. We have 8 operational projects so far with a large development pipeline of additional projects. Of those 8 projects, a few of them have been operating for over a decade now, and so we've got a lot of experience in this space, and we really see ourselves as a national leader in food waste anaerobic digestion. Alright, we're just going to play a quick video for you guys. It's sort of anaerobic digestion 101, just so that everyone's got a little context before we keep going.
I have no idea how loud this is about to be, so just bear with me.
Everyone, please be prepared.
Of food produced in the U.S. is thrown away, ending up in landfills or incinerators, and releasing methane and other harmful greenhouse gases into the atmosphere. Cow manure on dairy farms also emits methane. Using anaerobic digestion, Vanguard Renewables reduces methane emissions by producing renewable natural gas from food waste and manure. The process begins when inedible food waste is collected and delivered to a local farm and enters the hydrolyzer. The waste is heated to 108 degrees for 5 days. Manure is collected from the barns and travels by pipe to the anaerobic digester, where it's combined with the food waste from the hydrolyzer. In the anaerobic digester, the combined waste streams are kept at 102 degrees for 30 days, while naturally occurring microbes from the manure digest the organic waste and emit biogas. The biogas is contained by the rubber membrane at the top of the anaerobic digester tank and extracted for purification in an upgrader where unwanted gases like CO2 and H2S are removed. The result is pipeline-quality renewable natural gas, which enters the existing gas pipeline infrastructure, providing local homes and businesses with renewable energy. Liquid remaining from the anaerobic digestion process is piped to the solid separation building, where it's divided into liquid and solids. The liquid is used as low-carbon liquid fertilizer for crops, replacing chemical fertilizer. The solids become clean, comfortable bedding for the cows. With the help of food and beverage waste providers, we're transforming harmful, inedible waste into a tool for fighting climate change and helping to sustain America's family farms.
All right, so just one clarification there. Many of our sites today that are operational use dairy manure and are located on dairy farms. In this case, we're going to seed the tanks initially with dairy manure. just to really bring the bacteria into the system. And from that point on, once we have that bacteria colony built up, we have no need for ongoing manure. In the process, it's more of a benefit to the farms that we've worked with in the past. And so this is just a high-level diagram kind of showing exactly what we just talked about. Food and beverage materials, and typically when we say food and beverage materials, these are off-spec foods. And so you think about things like, you know, a Chobani yogurt that has too many chocolate chips, it doesn't pass the quality assurance program. They don't want to give it away because it comes with all sorts of liability, and so they need a place to send it. In many places, they're having to send that to landfills. Instead, you know, a facility like this can process that material and really give a beneficial, you know, reuse of it. And so it goes through that depackaging area, pre-processing, where we turn the solid waste into a slurry, which can then be pumped into the anaerobic digester. Inside the digester, the liquids are heated and mixed, the methane is extracted, it's then purified and injected into the natural gas grid. The liquids, once they've been digested, are then sent through a facility to remove the solids. They then go to a lagoon or a storage tank for storage until they can be land applied as organic fertilizer on the fields. So a big misconception about our facilities is the type of materials that we process. A lot of people see what we do and assume that we're like a municipal wastewater treatment plant and that we're taking, you know, human waste or biosolids. That is definitely not the case. Everything is, like I said before, off-spec food. Similar things to, you know, beverage waste, dairy products, fats, oils, and greases, all biodegradable materials that enter the digester. Inorganic materials like plastic, trash, bone, shells, all of that stuff is removed prior to the digestion process.
On this slide, we have an example of the aerial imagery with the site plan overlaid over the top of it. This site itself is located off of Made Industrial Drive in Middletown. It's in the I-2 General Industrial District. This would be located at the end of Made Industrial Drive, which is an existing industrial park. On this parcel, we currently have a Enbridge natural gas pipeline that already exists on site, and that is the pipeline that this facility would inject the renewable natural gas that would be purified. And north of that pipeline, there's a square, and that is our metering and regulation station. That facility would be operated by Enbridge, which is the pipeline utility, and they would be responsible for the operations of that metering and regulation station, which would fall under their existing regulations and operation protocols. I'd also like to note that surrounding that existing pipeline, there is an easement that is currently owned and has rights to Enbridge. The parcel itself is approximately 28 acres, and the total development of this parcel is 13 acres. As you can see, we are maintaining vegetated buffers along the western border of this parcel, and that is something that's really important to us, to just develop the area that's absolutely needed for this site facility and maintain a vegetated buffer to our neighbors. And south of this south of the southern border along Todd Hunter Road, we have also submitted a landscape design plan to improve any vegetative buffers that would be necessary to fill in existing visual screens along that boundary. We have also worked with Duke Energy to establish an electrical interconnection upgrades, and we will be improving the electrical access along Todd Hunter to reach the site, and then it would connect back to Made Industrial in the case of if there's ever a power outage. But we have received at this point a will serve letter from Duke Energy and are working on the electrical upgrades as we refine this engineering plan. I am also going to call for John Penchorn, our professional engineer from Stantec.
Good afternoon, good evening. My name is John Penchorn. I'm a civil engineer with Stantec. My address is 2321 Club Meridian Drive, Okemos, Michigan, and I have been sworn in. This is a really exciting project. Thanks for your time tonight. So you can see in front of you the site plan that we've proposed for this facility. Just walking through it at a very high level. On the north side of the site, you can see a rectangle that says Organics Receiving Area. That is the primary building that most of the facility operations will interact with. And so your trucks that are bringing off-spec food materials to the facility will be delivering to that building. There's a few different ways that they do it. There's a couple dock doors. There's an overhead door for trucks that drive all the way into the facility. And there's a pad for liquid offloading as well, kind of a hose system. All that material makes its way into the facility. That's where the depackaging and a lot of the magic happens to turn it into the slurry that is put in the anaerobic digester, just like that video kind of walked you through. One kind of prominent feature to point out is kind of the leg of Made Industrial that goes up to the north, kind of along the east of our facility. So it's existing infrastructure that's relatively recently built. It contains water, it contains sewer, it contains storm sewer, and it's designed for truck traffic. We have a truck parking area directly south of the facility, north of the pipeline. We've got a lot of the processing components to the west and the north of that organics receiving area. And so we're keeping kind of that yard as small as possible, as tight as possible. Some of the equipment west of the ring road there, the little rectangle with a circle around it is a flare. That is where any off-spec gas or gas that cannot be used for some reason would be burned in the absolute worst case scenario. We're not really here to burn product. That's just something we're required to have. As well as the rectangles directly north of that is where some of the gas upgrading equipment is. So that's where the methane that's produced by the digestion process is purified to pipeline quality so that we're able to meet Enbridge's standards for injection to their pipeline. South of the Enbridge pipeline, you see two large circles. That is digestate storage tanks. And so the byproduct of the digestion process is this material that we call digestate. It's somewhat of a fertilizer supplement, and as much as we'd love to be able to spread it on, farm fields year-round, winter does exist, and so we need to have storage in some capacity, and so we're able to store that digestate material there. If you could actually jump to the next slide, please. We already covered this. One more, please. And then just speaking through some of the engineering components of the plan, at least from a site civil perspective. Currently, the site drains east to west. Dix Creek runs up the west side of the property, and so we're following that natural drainage pattern. You can see that there are two different stormwater basins proposed. It catches the vast majority of runoff that would come from the site. Those are both wet ponds, meaning that there's a permanent pool there year-round, so that helps us trap sediment. Erosion control is kind of typical for a project like this. We're using erosion control blankets on any slopes that are 5 to 1 or steeper, just to make sure we're able to get grass to take as quickly as possible and minimize the potential for erosion. We're calling out inlet protection, which are those silt bags that sit in inlets across all the inlets in the project and adjacent in Made Industrial Road there for the first couple hundred feet. Silt fence where needed around the perimeter of the project. That's kind of a high level of that. From a storm sewer perspective, we're actually not proposing a connection to the city sewer. It would all drain into the ponds and then into Dix Creek eventually. From a sanitary and water perspective, we do propose to use the existing utilities within Made Industrial Drive. We'll be able to make that sanitary connection out of the Aura building. I do want to note for the commission that the sanitary is only bathroom waste. None of the processed water goes into the sanitary at any point. And then water service will come from that as well. There are existing hydrants that are built along Made Industrial. We're working with the fire department. Our understanding at this time is that those may be sufficient for the facility. Certainly if they feel that more is required, we'll be working with them on that. To make sure we're in full compliance with city standards. and I'll happy to take questions at the appropriate time for that. Thank you.
So one of our frequent questions that we receive about these sorts of facilities is truck traffic. I'd like to clarify that all of the truck traffic that would be entering this facility would be entering from the existing industrial park, which is located along Made Industrial Drive. Currently, that industrial park is improved with multiple other industrial facilities that are also utilizing similar equipment and trucking needs. No entrances would be located from Todd Hunter Road, so all industrial trucks would be entering from Made Industrial. I'd also like to add that all the trucks that would enter this site would be fully enclosed. There would be no loads that are open to the open atmosphere if smell concern is a concern.
Alrighty, so odor control is something we take very, very seriously at these projects. It's sort of the number one, potential issue of food waste projects is rotting food waste, smells bad. And so, as Annalie was saying, inside that building, we have a very, very sophisticated odor control system. We also utilize, constant air changes, negative air pressure, fast rolling garage doors so that none of the odor inside that building can ever escape from the building. And you can see right here, there's about the size of a residential house, an odor control filter on the back end of the facility where all the air is cycled through constantly throughout operations. We even section off the areas where waste is actually dumped on the floor to be processed with extra, we put in walls and things to really, have that space be separate from the rest of the facility where we have storage of pallets and other things with extra intensive, odor control in those areas. Once again, just to ensure that no odor can ever escape from the building. After the digestion process, the material then goes to covered storage tanks. And so what is it about the material that typically smells? It's the gas. And so that's what we're extracting in the digester. And so the material coming out doesn't have a ton of odor, or it essentially has no odor whatsoever. It smells sort of like topsoil, if that makes sense. And so we still cover the tanks just to be safe, keep rainwater out of them, that sort of thing. And so then it will sit in the tank for however long a period of time. Typically, there's two kind of major spreading seasons before and after harvesting, when the majority of that material will then go out and be land applied on farm fields. Alrighty, so then getting into some of the kind of community and environmental benefits that we see our facility having in this community. So one, renewable natural gas is renewable energy. It's domestically made fuel from what would otherwise be wasted and emitted into the atmosphere. And so we see that as a big positive. We support, typically types of community improvements and ways to get involved in the community, whether it's, sponsoring local sports teams, contributing to community projects like bike paths and fields and things like that. Creation of jobs. So during construction, there will be between 50 and 100 jobs during that 12 to 15 month period. Then permanently, there'll be about 8 to 15 salaried positions across the site. The 8 will be the people directly on site. We also then purchase a fleet of trucks, and so we'll have logistics coordinators, truck drivers, things like that as well. This project is not seeking any tax abatements or local incentives from the community, and so we're ready to pay our full share of property taxes, and we're expecting a roughly $60 million investment in this facility. Another local benefit is definitely the diversion of waste from landfills. Local landfills all over the country are filling up, and permitting new ones is super difficult. And so if you can take 40% of that waste and divert it to facilities like us, you can certainly preserve the time that it takes until that landfill will be full. The last big one is really for the local farming community. The digestate is really a high quality, low odor fertilizer that has a lot of the same benefits as manure or turkey litter or things like that have really intense odor that can be a big nuisance for the community. And so this gives them an option to get that same organic material that's really beneficial for their long-term soil health, for crop yields, and other things without the nuisance of it. Alrighty, so wrapping things up here. RNG generation enhances national energy independence, increases Middletown tax revenue, creates jobs during construction and full-time jobs during operations. diverse food waste from landfills and produces a high-quality organic fertilizer that'll be great for the local farming community.
Next, I would like to call up Professor Greg Soltis.
Good evening. My name is Greg Soltis. I work at Cleveland State as a professor of land or urban planning and also urban design, and also at RDL Architects as a senior designer. It's 21111 Schrin Boulevard, Suite 110, Beechwood, Ohio 44122. So I'm here to discuss kind of like an analysis of the evolution of your city and land use within the context of this particular site especially. And the basic information is on the screen as far as, the site, what is zoned, which has been mentioned before, I-2 General Industrial District. And then the analysis is based on looking at the zoning code, your zoning code, and also Monroe's, since some parcels are adjacent. The comprehensive plan that was completed in 2021 and then adopted in 2022. The Middletown Energy Plan, which was mentioned in the comprehensive plan in 2019. And then the historical and contextual analysis of how your city evolved and how land use evolved in your city. Next slide. The beginning starts out with an opinion statement that then, as I go through the rest of the report that you probably all received, I go in more detail, but that this proposal fulfills the fundamental purpose of zoning, which is by promoting the health, safety, and general welfare of people. Also, that this use is less intense than many other uses that are permitted in this district that exist currently or could be potentially built in the future. That this area, not just your city, but this area of the town has a long industrial history. And that this project aligns with the Middletown Energy Plan. Obviously, that's one of the things that they produce is as clean energy that makes Middletown and the region more energy independent. And that the facility exemplifies the city's vision to attract clean energy enterprises and other types of new industries, especially following the 1970s and the transition in the economy, by creating this MADE district to attract those industries. And that the proposed use satisfies the spirit of the review criteria. Next slide. So looking at Middletown, obviously it's named Middletown, right? It's in the middle of Dayton and Cincinnati, and to some degree even like Columbus in this big triangle. And it's along the Great Miami River, and the canal went through here in the 1920s, which really started to spark industry locally. And and also then the railroads arrived in about the 1850s, and lots of railroads started to converge here because being in the middle is, oftentimes a benefit. And so, the paper mills were started off of the power from the river, and then once the railroads went through and the 20th century arrived, steel mills played a significant role in the economy, and a lot of that development happened south of the core of the city, where a lot of the modes of transportation kind of come together down there. And that started to wrap around. Can you go to the next slide, please? Are we on the next slide? Oh, okay. Oh, did you? Well, I can talk off the cuff. Because I did a lot of study, and your city is very interesting. But most cities in Ohio that were industrial cities, industrial city is a new type of city that never existed in the world before until the late 1800s with the advent of the second industrial revolution. And they were these new types of cities that, were built to take in loads of raw materials, process those raw materials into finished goods, and then export them out to the world. And land use then was prioritized for industrial uses and transportation. And the people, I'm from Cleveland, my grandparents worked in the steel mills, the people depended on those manufacturing jobs to feed their families. And obviously, as we all know, come the 1970s, which 1970, from what I read, was about the peak of industry here, things changed very rapidly, and then industrial cities were looking to diversify their economies. But, by your very nature, by Cleveland's very nature, we are industrial places, and that impact on the environment is really strong. And not only that, but it's within our DNA to make things. And so as your city developed, if you look at the map that's on the screen, you can see kind of in the center lower portion of the map, that's obviously where a lot of the heavy industry and the steel mills are. And the neighborhood to the left of that, which is, I believe, called Amanda Oneida neighborhood, is really, that's the only neighborhood that's really kind of close, that and what surrounds there. But then the city kind of ends there as you move south, or it did at least in the mid 20th century. And so as the city looked to diversify the industrial base, it made sense to kind of expand in that direction, because post World War II, with the suburbanization of many cities, including yours, freeways were the driver of that. And 75, which is to the east of the city, drew development out of the city in that direction. So it made sense to go south for industrial development, because most of the land just where this image cuts off was just open agricultural space for most of the 20th century. So in 1980, when the MADE sort of district was, and the whole plan behind it to diversify industrial uses and create areas for that to happen, where you don't have to worry about removing intense, heavy industry that's already there, brownfield redevelopment, things like that, the southern part of the city made sense. And so the industry started to wrap around the Amanda Oneida neighborhood. And a lot of that was connected to the steel mills, but then lighter industry started down off of Yankee Road, obviously, creating what you have today. In Monroe, it was mostly agricultural, but some residential developments that are much more suburban in nature did start to develop down there. And it is important to remember that zoning codes are similar in many respects, that, whether you're Cleveland or you're Middletown or you're Monroe, you have a residential districts, but the definitions of what's residential is different, whether you're a big city, a suburban area, or a rural area. So Monroe's code is very different from yours, because Middletown, by its very nature, is urban, and your residential districts have much smaller lots and much denser allowances within your 4 zones, 4 being the most suburban. Whereas Monroe's even allows for what is really more of like a farm-type district, the rural residential, which are the 85 acres to the west of this site. And so most of what wraps the west and the top of the site is the more agricultural residential, and then there is more of like a suburban residential off of Todd Hunter Road. Do we have Wi-Fi back yet? Okay, I was gonna just keep going until we got it. So I think I've covered most of this, so we can, let me see if one thing, the MADE. So MADE Industrial Park in 1980, strategic location, there's all this infrastructure that industry and the city have, and probably the county too, over the decades have invested in this area in order to draw in industry to this area. And so, it did develop. Next slide. So this just goes through some aerials kind of showing development from 1956 to today. It's actually really interesting. I love this kind of stuff to see how things change. So you can see the steel plant up on the top right. That's the Amanda Oneida neighborhood at the top in the center. And Excello, which I think is now Lemon, over to the left, because there was a steel mill there early on. But you can see in 1956, it's pretty much just all agricultural down there. And any of the residential is really associated with farming. And then when you get to 1964, you do see some of the effects of the like post-war suburbanization, where you see some of these suburban residential lots being developed. Again, these, when you look at a parcel map, are still much larger in size than even the suburban residential developments on the eastern half of your city. If you go to the next slide. So 1970, which was really kind of the peak of industry, and then it started to decline after that. And then the next slide, we go forward, 50 years. Oh wait, no, go back, I'm sorry. I should have said the next aerial. In 1985, you can see the effects of the MADE district sort of initiative already off of Yankee Road, with light industrial and other types of industrial uses growing there. So that was like a really smart move, whoever did that long ago. I'm a strong believer in like remembering what people did in the past. That's good, because you want someone to remember what you did today. Next slide. And then 1994, 2005, you can see, the continued development of the Made District, and, you see the industry also, the more heavy, intense uses kind of wrapping around the Amanda Oneida neighborhood into this area. Next slide. And even more so on this one in 2015 and 2021. And you can see continued, suburban type development in Monroe, but still a lot of agricultural land that still is open, used for farming in this area as well. Next slide. So basically, all of that, in looking at all of that, like, does this fit into this zone? And especially not just this zone, specifically where it is. And when you think about everything that was presented before me, and you think about the evolution of your city, the evolution of this area, this type of use, this anaerobic digester, is almost perfect in that when we zone things, especially now as we're trying to get better at zoning, we try to do a transition in uses. And sometimes you can do that with actual zoning. Right, you can have R1, R2, and then you can transition to commercial, but it might be a gentle commercial with less density, and then you ramp up. In this instance, we're going from, what is a pretty intense industrial allowed uses in this district to this agricultural farming almost district next door. And the anaerobic digester is industrial and it's agricultural, just by its very nature. It contributes to both economies, and it circulates through both economies. It's industrial by nature in its processes, but it takes from agriculture, produces natural gas that can be used in the electric grid, and then creates fertilizer that goes back to the farms. And the nature of the buildings fits within both an industrial and even agricultural. As I was driving up from the south, and you can see farms with the different shapes of the different buildings, and I'm not a farmer, but the things that bring it up into the silo or what have you, and the industry that's in the area, the shapes, the forms, all of that kind of fits within it as well. So it seems like a really nice transition at the edge of your city to be respectful to your neighbors and have a use that kind of unites the two uses that exist right there on the site. Next slide. This is, these are the neighborhoods. The next slide. The pink is all the Made industrial district. And then you can see the site at the very lower left-hand side there. Next slide. And then alignment with the Middletown Energy Plan. It promotes local resiliency. It uses local sources to create energy to put back into the local economy and used locally, which makes Middletown more energy secure. On economic development goals, so there were the economic development goal was one of the goals in the plan. So this creates local jobs and reinvestment opportunities. It strengthens the industrial base and city competitiveness, and it delivers long-term cost savings through energy efficiency. And then business retention and innovation. It positions Middletown as a regional leader in sustainable manufacturing and the circular economy. And it also, again, provides energy to other businesses close by. Next slide. And then alignment with the comprehensive plan. It is a high-tech use that is more related to agricultural and energy uses. So with that, it does fit within the spirit of the district. It certainly fits within the spirit of the district, the history of the district, and how it's evolved. It is supported by all the infrastructure that's put into that area to attract industry. And then with regard to land use and office, I did see that the city released an RFP to study downtown and strengthening downtown. And so it might be a better fit for that type of office to be targeted towards downtown, to revive downtown rather than to create office on a greenfield site out here. And again, I was talking about how the use fits well, but really it does fit well with the vision for Middletown and how industries evolved in the city. Next slide. And it is compatible with the zoning district. So It's allowed within the indoor industrial, because pretty much all the functions are indoors, so none of it really happens outside. All the core processes are enclosed, and it meets the intent of the manufacturing and production with caustic or hazardous materials, which they are more experts on. But by classification only as biological processes, there's no caustics in it. Next slide. And then I believe, without having to go through all of the conditional use review criteria, most of what I presented today speaks to these things. So it's allowed as a use, and we're reviewing it as a conditional use. It is consistent with the zoning code and with the master plan. It meets the use-specific standards of no hazardous materials. There's proper buffering and screening because there's the existing forest area to the west and planned buffering on Todd Hunter Road. And the forested area on the west is pretty intense. We were at the site recently. It complies with the development standards, and it is harmonious with the area and the character, and definitely harmonious with the morphology, the evolution of Middletown and your industrial heritage. No detrimental impacts, odor, noise, traffic. They discussed that already, and the odor or everything is contained inside, and so that doesn't affect the neighboring areas around it. Safe access and circulation via Yankee Road only and up Maid Industrial Drive. No loss of scenic or historic resources. This area, as far as I could tell by researching, holds no historic significance since the settlement of Middletown, and we're preserving most of the trees that are on the site. It doesn't impede orderly development. It fits in with the development that's been happening within the Maid District and on Maid Industrial Drive, and it will conform to site development standards. Is that the last one? And we have a close-up aerial here just so you can see the site, which is the shape in the middle. Is there a slide after this one? There we go, puts it on there. Just so you can see context and see how the agricultural land wraps the west and the northern part of the site. And then the more like suburban rural in Monroe is to the south of the site. And next slide. And I already discussed, when looking at zoning, that Monroe zoning, what they call residential, they have different type of residential standards than Middletown does, obviously because Middletown is much more urban than Monroe. And how this use acts as a transition between the rural and the industrial forms. Next slide. The development will be concentrated in the northern half of the parcel, keeping it away from the residential that does exist. There's that mature woodland, which we mentioned already, and it maintains a natural separation from rural and residential lands. Next slide. That's it. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Real quick, before you sit down, 2 questions. Number 1, were you sworn in?
Oh, I was sworn in.
And then number 2, so we're here on a conditional use application. It's in the conditional use world because it's manufacturing or it's industrial with caustic or hazardous materials. You just in your presentation said there were no hazardous materials. Can you kind of square that? Can you?
That's my understanding from them, and they're going to explain that because they're all biological materials, and they were going to explain that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're depending on them to explain that.
Yeah. It just if that is true, then it would fit into the use indoors without the conditional use. But we are going through the conditional use process.
Okay.
I can just sort of very quickly address that. Majid Maklouf, for the record, with Brent Zochner. I think the applicant's position is, the materials coming in are materials that we have in our house, effectively food that we have in any house. The process is completely enclosed. There's all the safety measures that take in place, and the byproduct, the digestate, effectively is what is the ability. It goes on farms and effectively turns them instead of using synthetic or fertilizer. Actually, you're able to have organic fertilizer for the farms. The solid materials goes on farms that's used for bedding, for for cows. Again, the chemistry, that's why we have the other people here to speak to the chemistry. Neither Professor Soltis nor I am the chemist in terms of what's hazardous or what's not. But I think the applicant didn't feel that we fit that criteria, but we have, we're okay going through we're here obviously on the conditional use process to go through that process. But I'll let them address the issue of the materials more than that.
So I think that what is really triggering the opinion from you all about hazardous materials is the hydrogen sulfide that can be present in biogas. Is that correct? Okay.
Just address the issue.
So what I would say is if that is indeed the case, then the H2S is a result not of us adding external chemicals into the process, it's the sulfur content in food. And so when you turn something that has sulfur content in it into a gas, it creates hydrogen sulfide. And so that hydrogen sulfide we take very seriously. It's inside of an enclosed vessel where we actually utilize oxygen injection as well as ferric chloride to passively turn the gaseous hydrogen sulfide back into elemental sulfur that can go back into the liquids where it originally came from. It's also great for the fertilizer product that we then give to the farmers. Immediately following the digester, which I'm not sure we touched on previously, is an extremely low pressure system. And so you measure, the pressure of a digester tank in terms of water columns, it's not even a pound of pressure. And so we use fans to move that gas out of the tank. And the very first place it goes to is a carbon media bed similar to the odor control system, where any remaining trace amounts of hydrogen sulfide, which are typically measured in parts per million, are removed then in that activated carbon media. So I hope that helps clarify.
Yes, thank you. So I do have several questions, and I'm not sure which one of you might be the best to answer this one. So I'm just curious about what the relationship between the entity this application is being entered under, Middletown 81, and Vanguard Renewables. I just don't understand what the relationship is there.
We're a developer, and like most developers, we have a lot of entities that hold different assets. Mm-hmm. This project is planned to be a joint venture with different investors and different participants than every single one of our other projects. And so there's lenders and other things where it just makes sense to have a separate entity that houses each project. And so that's how we've done our projects, since I've been at the company.
And speaking of other projects, so I did some research on your company, and I saw online, the most recent data I was able to find was from March 2024. The company claims to operate 32 digesters, and then you said that you operate 8 sites. So is that 32, and then I assume some more have popped up since then, digesters on 8 sites, or are there more?
So I think the discrepancy is the sites that we own and operate are the 8 that I was talking about. We also did a joint venture with Dominion Energy, a large utility company, where we built dairy manure projects similar to these, but without the food waste element across the country, which we operated for a short period of time. Basically got them trained up, and then they took those assets over ultimately. So that might be the discrepancy.
Another one that I saw was that Vanguard Renewables is part of this farm-powered strategic alliance, and I'm about to list some potential members, but I'm just interested in whether or not these corporate entities are also part of the joint venture here. I saw Starbucks, Unilever, AstraZeneca, and the Dairy Farmers of America all in this strategic alliance here. Are there any stakeholders that I listed here that would be included here as well that you're aware of?
In terms of being an investor in the project,
so directly involved with
essentially what the Farm Powered Strategic Alliance is, it's a really soft commitment from large, a lot of times international food companies that are making a commitment when we're located and we build a facility in a market. They want to use the best industry standard in order to dispose of that material. Like I said earlier, a lot of times, off-spec food ends up in landfills, and these companies are all trying to get their sustainability, much better, and have goals, as soon as 2030 that they need to hit. And so they're making commitments. One, to send food waste when we build facilities within, viable hauling distance of their locations. and also in some cases to buy the renewable natural gas to run their facilities instead of using fossil fuels. And so most of those folks on there are not investors in the projects, they're simply customers.
Okay, so that leads me to another question that I had. So I know that you guys are obviously still in the very early stages of this this project, but I mean, do you guys have any potential contracts or like prospects lined up for both securing the waste streams to like, you know, do the value added process to, and do you have any like prospective like customers that are local already, or is that something that's a little later down the line for you?
So we have an entire environmental services division, and we really look at Ohio overall as a market and how do we best service this market with where we put our assets. So we have 2 other assets that are almost fully permitted. They've already been through zoning and are going now through the engineering process, and this will be our 3rd project.
In Ohio?
Correct. And so we have a number of different customers throughout the state. But we have an entire division that's essentially its own, you know, environmental services company which procures the waste and works with our customers. And so I can't get into exactly who that is. I'm guessing it's some of the folks that you named that are part of the Farm Power Strategic Alliance as well as others.
No, and the only thing I just wanted to add is the company tries as much as possible to source locally and to also, so in terms of where the product would come in, and part of the analysis why it's produced here is because there's a you know, an analysis that there is product available locally in terms of the food waste that can come in, and also the farming community within nearby that would benefit from the digestate. So yes, we look at Ohio as a state, but each project we try to source, it defeats the purpose to try to have a renewable energy project if you're driving across state line, you know, all the way from Cleveland to here. So I think we try to minimize distances as much as possible, which gives us the opportunity in this case to partner with a lot of local partners.
So that brings me to another question. Sorry, I've got a chain here. Just for a little context, for those of you that don't know, I am very active with regenerative agriculture projects going on locally and environmental restoration. So this is something that when this landed on my desk, I was very interested in. I don't have any doubts about the underlying technology, but I do have a question about all of the projects that I have seen this sort of like development like happen for, like you mentioned before. These typically take place on site at dairy farms. I just have concerns about diesel, the amount of fuel being burned to actually transport the materials to be processed into this renewable natural gas. Have you guys done any studies on whether or not like how much carbon is being emitted versus how much, sorry, words are starting to fail me now. Like, I know sequester isn't the right word necessarily because we're talking methane, not carbon dioxide, but like there's got to be some sort of like trade-off here. Have you guys considered this?
So like you said before, this project is very early stages. We're still looking at our land application, management strategy. And depending on which farms we work with, that's obviously going to change the transportation of the fertilizer. But what I would say is all of the gas in the renewable natural gas market is really sold based on life cycle carbon intensity. And so all of those type of things are accounted for in terms of what the value of our fuel is. And so we're looking to optimize every single one of those variables because that's ultimately our revenue stream and what dictates the unit price of our gas.
Okay.
And sorry, I mean,
no, go ahead.
You can put it much better than I can, is I think if you think a lot of the suppliers here are companies themselves who've made commitments in terms of how they're going to meet certain benchmarks. So by definition, sort of the net carbon impact has to be negative. So that all goes into the equation in terms of including the trucking. That is always part of the equation to make sure the net carbon emissions is lower, not higher, as a result of what we're doing.
Thank you. And then it's really just one last thing, and it's more of like a request than a question, but as this project unfolds, I feel like community buy-in and involvement is like paramount with something like this. So I really request that as this goes on, you guys work with local businesses in Middletown and Monroe to source the products and not just local corporate sources like small businesses. But that's really all. Does anybody else on the board have any questions?
I do. You operate 8 facilities at this point, right?
Correct.
I don't know what type of an accident can occur in the operation of your biodegradable or regenerative process. Is there an accident that can occur? I mean, we heard Mr. Horn mention out at Miller, if they even came or at Edgewood, I guess, if they came close to the water aquifer, they had to take measures. Have you had accidents? And I don't even know what an accident might be.
So I'm not sure exactly where the aquifers are in relation to the site, but
Well, I wasn't asking that particularly.
Yeah.
I'm just talking about in your, have you experienced any type of an issue through these operations?
Yeah, so we actually have someone from our health, safety, and environment team here, Kyle Grau, who can answer that much better than I can.
Hey, good evening. My name is Kyle Grau. I work as the Environmental Compliance Manager with Middletown 81 Vanguard Renewables, and I have been sworn in.
Thank you.
So we have...
Address, sir. Your address?
Yeah, my address is 133 Boston Post Road, Weston, Massachusetts. So we have experienced some spill incidents in the past. Of course, with every sort of incident or event that occurs at one of our facilities, we take it very seriously. We do investigate it. We come up with corrective action and preventative action plans associated. We take those lessons that we learn and we incorporate them into future projects. For example, in the past we had a spill associated with a line that broke in the winter season. We had very cold weather. The liquid inside the line froze. It subsequently broke the line. Moving forward, we're insulating all of our lines to prevent a similar incidents from occurring.
To follow up on that, not that particular issue, but if you have an accident like you just described, are you required to report that to the Ohio EPA?
Typically, a regulatory agency such as the Ohio EPA will set reporting limits associated with chemicals or food waste that is spilled. So depending on what's outlined or included within our permit, that will establish the reporting limits, and our company is 100% committed with following the requirements inside of our permits and reporting necessary spills to the agency.
I just noticed one more question that I had here. So you guys plan to take food waste and then, take it out of its packaging and then, process that. What happens to the packaging?
Yep, so all of the things like cardboard, aluminum, plastics, they're all put into balers and recycled, and so we have a whole station inside that building where you've got guys ripping off the cardboard of the boxes. You have can crushers for all the aluminum cans, and so as much of that stuff that can be recycled through conventional recycling is done. About 5% is left over at the end called residue, is at least what we refer to it as. And so that's what we then take. You could take it to a landfill. We typically take it to an incineration plant just because a lot of our customers have zero landfill policies.
And to add to that, all of that material that would either be recycled or diverted to landfill would be stored within our organics receiving facility, and that is fully odor controlled, so that will not be stored outside the facility.
Thank you.
Do you guys qualify for federal renewable tax credits?
We do, yes.
And your largest revenue source is the sale of gas, right?
It's the sale of gas, but it's pretty close between that and what folks pay in tipping fees, just like a landfill to come dump material.
Okay. So you charge the companies that are giving you your material to dump with you, right?
Correct. We offer them a cheaper alternative
Like a
than their
landfill
current
would.
disposal.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
There was a concern by one of the departments, Middletown departments, that, or question, are you operating 24/7?
So the
24
digester
hours a day?
is always operating. It's a continuous operation. We won't be receiving loads all 24 hours of the day. The one thing I would say is a lot of large food manufacturers and other folks we'll have emergency situations where we like that flexibility to be able to help our customers, but we do have other plants throughout the country where we don't operate 24/7.
And noise, the noise generated from the processing, is there, what kind of noise decibel rating are we talking about? Do you know?
It's very minimal. I don't have the exact decibels on the top of my head. I'm guessing. No. In the context of steel manufacturing, it's going to be a lot quieter. And so we've never had a noise complaint, and we have facilities as like, within 10 yards of a cow barn or within 100 feet of one of the dairymen's houses. And so these are very, very quiet systems. Anything that makes noise is inside of a very insulated building, which would be our hammer mill that we use to depackage the food waste.
That's, I think he just touched on the point. 2 points or 3 points with respect to that is one, pretty much anything that causes noise is indoors, completely enclosed. The site has been designed in a way, and I think John can speak better to that, but that minimizes the trucks backing in. So it's designed in a way where the truck, if there's any stacking or anything, there's not the noise from the trucks backing up. And 3, keep in mind the amount of vegetation that we're preserving, the natural buffer that's already in there, and then we're also adding to it. So it's really protected in every way.
Have you already received, or are you in the process of getting permissions from the Ohio EPA?
So the Ohio EPA has some pretty strenuous, requirements in order to submit permits. It requires very detailed engineering drawings. And so we like to get through our zoning process first, make sure we've got site control, and the project's really going to move forward before we get into, very expensive design work.
Makes sense.
But we have gone through that process at 2 other facilities in the state.
Okay. Follow-up, similar question then. What's that process look like as far as partnering with the pipeline that's there and getting kind of plugged in with that?
So currently for our timeline that's expected for this facility, we expect to begin construction by April of 2027. Followed by that period, we expect a year of construction, which would bring us to April of 2028. And following that, we would have 6 months of commissioning, which is the period in which we are ramping up the digester to biologically be able to accept the food waste, where it's then able to be generated for renewable natural gas, which is where Enbridge would step in. And Enbridge would take title of the renewable natural gas following the gas leaving the biogas upgrader, and then the handoff is at the flange right before the metering and regulation station.
Has that agreement already been struck with them, or is that something kind of in conjunction with assuming zoning and all the other permitting and stuff?
The process with Enbridge, we have begun the early stages with an interconnection service agreement. But as we progress forward with the permitting process, that's when this agreement would be finalized with Enbridge.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Typically, it comes with a large down payment, and so it's not that much closer to construction.
Makes sense. Do we have any other questions that can be addressed to the applicants?
In the back, and you can face
Please.
toward them. So this is the Ohio EPA's line diagram. Is your process in line with that? So there's no other byproduct from your process? I'm not talking about the recycling portion of it. So you're getting natural gas out of this, you're getting fertilizer out of this, and you're getting bedding for livestock. There's no other byproduct from your process.
So that would be correct. The only other thing that we're considering is the gas upgrading system essentially separates methane and CO2. And so when that CO2 is separated, it's typically just vented back into the atmosphere. What we are looking at doing is potentially upgrading that CO2 to food and beverage grade, which we would then sell to local customers. It is the only other one outside of what I see up there.
Thank you.
Any more follow-up for?
One more question from council for the city.
Please.
So the reason this case went through the conditional use route was the determination by city staff that there was hazardous or caustic material involved, specifically biogas. One of the requirements under the city's code is that when you're applying for this use with hazardous or caustic material, that you submit a identification of the hazardous or caustic material and your plan to deal with any potential hazards from that material. Is there a reason that that plan was not submitted along with the application? What's the status of that plan?
So with our application, we provided the two materials that are stored on site, and that's the ferric chloride, which is used to treat the hydrogen sulfide, and the anti-foam material, which that material is stored on site in emergency situations. That's when that material will be used. Typically, we do not need to use that material as it's used for foaming events within the digester. Think of foaming as being like the frothing of milk in a cup. And that's when the biology of the digester would react in a way where it would cause a foaming event, but that's able to be reacted to with mechanical agitation, which is a process that already exists within the digester. But that's just a safeguard that Vanguard utilizes on our facilities if that scenario were to occur. And on our New England sites, we have not had to use that material in close to 7 years on any of our sites.
I'll follow up with that because it seems to me maybe this is where some of the questions may come from the staff side. So it sort of seems within our packet at least, that the question comes from the biogas itself. Is that the biogas, is that synonymous with the H2S? Are those the same?
So essentially what biogas is methane, CO2, and some trace contaminants like hydrogen sulfide.
Okay. So within those the different components that make up the biogas then, is this something then that would fall under a noxious matter or chemicals, and what is then with council, am I correct in assuming this is where the question is coming from of addressing the biogas itself?
Yeah, that's exactly correct. And
Okay.
what are the documented safety precautions for dealing to prevent potentially hazardous chemical reactions or contamination? There's supposed to be a plan submitted for that in conjunction with conditional use application. That's what's missing.
Sure.
Which was identified.
Is this what the foam is? Sorry, I'll let you do the talking.
Yeah, I think something important to note here is with every one of our projects, we create what's called a site-specific safety plan and an emergency response plan that incorporates and considers all potential emergencies that could occur on site, the controls that we have in place, and the resources that we'll use to ultimately mitigate the potential emergency. We do partner with our local emergency response services to outline the project and go over the scope of operation to ensure that the necessary resources are there to assist us in the event of an emergency. As it relates to biogas, of course it is hazardous in nature. It does contain the H2S component. I think it's really important to focus on the controls that we implement on site. So we go through what's called a HAZOP analysis within the development phase of the project, where we consider our processes and the hazards associated. And from those HAZOPs, we typically implement over 70 critical safety controls within our project. Those can include interlocks, e-stops, gas meters to understand temperature, pressure, constituents inside the digester. And with all those variables being considered, we can monitor the health of our system and the health of our process. And as we look at the data, if we find anything concerning, we can intervene and potentially stop and eliminate potential emergency situations from occurring. In addition to that, we also use what's called intrinsically safe equipment on site. That means this is equipment that doesn't create a spark, and doesn't build up enough heat to create a potential fire or explosion on site. Anaerobic digestion, in and of itself, the nature of it, it lacks oxygen. Of course, in order to have fire, a component that's needed is oxygen. So in and of itself, it's a relatively safe operation. Hope that answers the question.
Thank you for the explanation there. So this will be directed at council again, and then as the applicant can maybe answer that. It sounds like there are existing safety measures that the company has used in the past and will plan to use in the future. Is the question then kind of what was outlined there per se? We do not currently have in our possession written down what kind of outlines that? Was that sort of where some of the questions coming from? Maybe Ms. Benninger would be better to follow up on that.
So in part, use specific standard part A for this review, or for this use type, as part of any review. So this is part of any review, a conditional use review. The applicant shall provide the city a list of noxious matter chemicals used during the manufacturing process and document the safety precautions that will be used to prevent potentially hazardous chemical reactions or contamination. This was not received. It sounds like they have a plan in place. We've moved to acknowledgement of biogas and the production of natural gas as being hazardous. As we're all aware, some of us use natural gas to heat our homes, turn on the stove, fire happens. I understand there's not oxygen in the tanks, but accidents can happen. So that is what has driven that production of natural gas through the biogas production, the refinement, and then it's eventually injection into the natural gas line. That is required in writing, and then part of the staff recommendation is for then, once the applicant then submits for their zoning permit application, they provide an additional, hopefully the same noxious list of chemical or matter, as well as those safety precautions, so we can compare to what is received for planning commission review and consideration.
Yeah, I think, so just a quick point. I think there may have been a little bit of a misunderstanding because it sort of, from our standpoint, the way that we were thinking, I mean, the biogas, the site plan itself, the operation, the controls in there are the plan. In terms of the actual, what happens if there is an emergency here or there, those I think are site specific, and our thought process was once the building is, the site is not fully engineered yet, so it's hard to sort of develop them in a vacuum. Once the building is engineered, there will be a site plan in place, and I presume, not just the city, to the extent that the county may have an emergency operations plan, or we'd be working with anybody that needs to. We need it for our own protection, for our own insurance purposes, for our own. So for all practical purposes, we'd be working with anybody. I think it was what we understood was sort of what chemicals are you using, and we sort of submitted the chemicals that are there, and in the sense that they've almost never been needed. But if the idea is the biogas process, I mean, the entire design is intended from a building standpoint to protect against that. The actual practice is a day-to-day basis. Once the building is ready, once we have an operations plan in place for that building, I think we'd be working with the safety forces, with anybody, to make sure that that does happen.
So I do have one more question, and it's kind of two questions together in one. I think the public works, they asked what are contingency plans for delivered waste in the event that the facility is out of operation for an extended period of time. Coupled with that, what are the contingency plans in case of batches that are contaminated and are no longer suitable for your production purposes?
Yep, so again, we're very early on in this project, and so we don't necessarily have exact locations specified right now, but anytime we develop a new location, we develop strategic partnerships with other potential disposal outlets not only because you might not be able to, process some waste because it's contaminated or whatever, but also you might have customers that have more waste than you can take. And so you try to manage a digester with retention time, and it limits the amount of material you can push through it in a matter of time. And so we always have a number of strategic partners, like not just one or two, like you're talking 5 to 10 within, call it a 25, 50-mile radius, where we always have an outlet to take the material if our system is down, because we have to give that support to our customers or they won't be our customers anymore.
And then the fire department has a question where they ask, are there plans for future expansion? I know we're just talking about the initial phase here, but have you guys done an expansion at any of the sites that you own and operate, or just operate if you don't own?
So the only sites where we've done expansions, when Vanguard Renewables was formed, we purchased the first 2 digesters that were built in the state of Massachusetts. The technology is a little bit older and didn't have some of the bells and whistles and safety precautions and other things that we wanted, and so we did go in and upgrade those systems. This system here is going to be designed to a certain size, which is the same size we're building across the country right now. And so outside of a small margin of excess capacity, we would have to come back here because we'd be building new structures and have an entirely different facility. And so, like I said, maybe 10-20% room for the project to grow over time. But anything more than that, the equipment's not going to be sufficient.
Thank you.
And actually, this is a point I wanted, obviously, this is the plan that we're before the Planning Commission for approval for. The applicant is still going through the value engineering through. So in all likelihood, the final plan may actually shrink somewhat as opposed to expand. And as Steve indicated, obviously, we understand any major, this is a conditional use, and the way we're permitted here is through conditional use. So if there would be any future expansion, we'd have to come back before the city and this body for an amendment of the conditional use. But the reality of it is these are very, very, very expensive projects. You don't go through it today with the idea that 5 years down the road you're going to expand it. That would be just horrible business decision making. It doesn't make sense to do it.
Yeah, the purpose of me asking that wasn't like asking, are you guys going to expand, but just understanding like what the company has done in your greater corporate footprints, I guess, as far as that question goes. But I don't think I have any further questions for the applicant. Does anybody else?
No, I don't think I do. Anyone else?
With that, if I may, I just wanted to go over 4 points very quickly just to make sure that the record is clear. One is the issue with respect to the setbacks. We want to make sure in terms of the deviation. I'll point out what sort of Professor Soltis testified in the differences between the zoning, between literally the parcel that we're talking about for the setback is 85.59 acres. If you think of a residential lot, you could practically fit 80 parcels on that parcel. It's pretty much used for agricultural purposes. In terms of a house, we're not anywhere near 600 feet of any residence. We're talking purely about property line, not actual residence. With respect to the height question, and I just wanted to make sure that maybe I turn it over to Annalie to explain the exact height, or correct me if I say it wrong. The way I understand it on the digester is it's 40 feet high, the walls, and then the membrane will take us up to 65. If you take the half point, we could be somewhere, we don't have it fully designed, so we don't know the exact number, but it could be more than 50, so we just wanted some variation for that to make sure that that's accounted for, to have the flexibility to do that. And then thirdly, obviously, the issue of the expiration, the duration, just to make sure we don't run into an issue with the construction timeline. And Steve did address the hours of operation issue. I saw that was a recommendation. We asked the commission for flexibility because I think, keep in mind why we are here. Even the reason why this use was subjected to the conditional use is because of hazardous or caustic materials, not because of trucking, not because of the intensity of use. So in terms of the nexus between the hours of operation, and now again, the trucks will only come within, I mean, the reality of it is, I don't know that we would expect the trucks to come before 6 a.m. or after, 6 p.m. But it just sort of, we asked the commission to keep in mind the flexibility, because if there's an emergency or something, we don't want to have a condition that ends up, we run into violations of the condition. And with that, I think I touched, absent the commission have any questions, we thank you for your indulgence with us, a very long presentation, and we look forward to hopefully becoming a citizen of Middletown and being partners with the city and the community for the long term.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time. All right, we'll continue the public hearing. If there's anyone else wishing to speak in favor of this conditional use, please come forward and identify yourself. Please.
Councilman Paul Horn, City of Middletown, and yes, I was sworn in. This is the second innovation that we've had come before us. We had that other one on Oxford State Road where they're actually compacting garbage. So it's kind of nice to have this before us, that they're picking Middletown for this, and it's in an industrial area. This is what that was made for, is so we can have these things, because in that area you have Stone Coke, across the way you have Cleveland Cliffs, you have a natural gas farm there, and you have other industrial complexes there. And it's just amazing to me on how people are actually thinking ways to help out remove the waste. Just as a real quick statistic, this is 2018, I'm sure it's gone up, but we do about 292.4 million tons of garbage a year, which is about 4.9 pounds per person per day. So if we can divert that and actually turn that into what they said the process is, and utilize it for natural gas. And natural gas, we're okay with natural gas. We got about 86 years left of that. That's being drawn and being processed in the United States. But if you can find other ways to make it and also save the landfills, that would be something that we need to look forward to. And I mean, that's something we're going to have to think about, because right now coal's going to have a problem around 2060, and you're out of petroleum in 2080, 2090, even with fracking. So your kids or the grandkids are going to have to Star Wars something up. And if we can utilize natural gas to do this, and you have a process that does this. And also notice what they said about on how they get the cardboard, get the cans, get the things recyclable instead of just putting them in a landfill. That would be and this is also down the road, and I'm not endorsing, I'm just saying we have a commercial and what I call commercial and residential recycling facility in Middletown that does that for corporations. So we're seeing that this is a great possibility, and I think that anytime we can have an innovation come into our city and be able to utilize it in an industrial area and not in a residential area or historical area, I think we need to really kind of look into that. And also the process of this is going to produce construction jobs. This is going to produce permanent jobs in Middletown. And I just think it's a process that we need to look at, and we need to hear all sides of it. But again, this is an innovation, that something that is going to be helping the environment, helping our environment in our area, and producing and putting more fuel into our area. So as long as everyone falls into the what they have agreed to, and this is to me almost like, this is my opinion, this is like a preliminary situation that we're looking at, because we've done that before. But I think we really need to look at these innovations, and I'm really happy that people are picking Middletown for these innovations, because we are an industrial town. We have a steel mill, we have Air Products, we have the Coke plant, we have Cohen Brothers, and we have other small entities that do work here. So anytime we can have an innovation that actually is the future, I think we should really take a hard look at how this is going to be a profitable teaming between this corporation and the city of Middletown and our citizens.
Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak in favor, please come forward and identify yourself. All right, seeing no response, we will continue forward. It's currently 8:04. We've heard a lot of testimony already. I would propose a very brief 5-minute recess, give people the time to stretch, take a bio break if needed, as well as to synthesize some of the information you may have heard, which may affect the questions or responses that you have tonight. So we are going to take a quick recess, and we will start again at 8:10. Thank you.
This really isn't any different than like Mount Upke. They collect the methane and they put it in the pipeline. And they also burn it for electricity.
I ate dinner before I came.
I haven't. I told my wife maybe 7 o'clock.
I have a cough drop to hold you over.
Supposed to pick up dinner. Used to offer better food than cough drops.
How old is he?
Thank you very much.
My all-time favorite.
All-time favorite's some of this octopus's garden. Little obscure.
Yeah. Yes.
I love a Ringo lead.
All around the neighborhood. You know Yes?
Same.
Oh, okay, great. Yeah, Yes is. I was actually college
I
roommates
was
with his
lucky.
brother-in-law.
I got to take a class in undergrad that was
Oh,
Beatles
okay.
history,
Nice.
and that was really cool. Yeah. All right. We'll reconvene here in just a moment. I do see there are some folks who have not returned yet. We'll give them just another minute to return here, and then we'll get started.
I'm about to put my
Jacket's nice color.
I'm not equipped.
There you go. I didn't know that was camel hair was a thing. So we went a couple years back. I used to volunteer more with my church season. We did like a fancy Christmas dinner party, and so I took some of the guys just thrifting. 6-year-old boys don't have like suits really. And one of them he found it was a nice shirt, jacket he found, but it was camel hair. And the boys they thought that was hilarious. That's all they could talk about after. Yeah, no. Yeah. Hey, animals are hard animals. They're doing something right. All right. Going to bring us back to order now. Continuing with the public hearing, I will now ask if there's anyone wishing to speak in opposition of this conditional use to please come forward and identify yourself and confirm that you have been sworn in. So if there's anyone wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward and identify yourself.
Hi, my name is Laura Smiley. I am the property owner at 6099 Niederlander Lane. I've not actually been sworn in because I wasn't sure if I was going to speak today because I have a cold. So I guess I should probably do that now, should I?
Please say sworn.
Sorry, no.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I don't actually live at this property. My husband and I purchased it in 2023 in an estate sale from the family who owned it for over 200 years, dating back to about 1819. They were the original farm owners in the area. I believe they owned up to about 1,000 acres of the surrounding areas. I have to clarify, I'm not necessarily speaking in opposition to this project. I had made some inquiries to the, because I knew that property was for sale for quite a while. And late last year, I made some phone calls to see about purchasing that property. And Mr. Westheimer and I couldn't come to an agreement on an appropriate per acreage amount to purchase it. And I know that he had some large aspirations for that property. And at the time, they told me it would be used as a truck washing facility. And so when I received this notice in the mail about this meeting, I was pretty concerned about that, not understanding what sort of chemicals they'd be using on the property. But yeah, I share about 1,800 feet of border with this property, including Dix Creek that runs kind of on both of our properties, but primarily on mine. And I purchased the property. I'm an equine veterinarian, and I am operating my business from there. I also have restored two 200-acre buildings, a house and a barn, pretty extensively, and lease out the house to a very nice young couple that helped me maintain the farm. And I have pretty strong interest in land conservation. I've restored some of the property to grazing land, pasture land for horses, as well, which was kind of the original use of the property. And I'm hoping to restore the rest of it to meadowland and also reforest as much as I can. Yeah, so I mean, I was concerned when I received the notice, and I emailed Ms. Benegar pretty quickly and stated that I had a lot of concerns about it. And I spoke to her on the phone, and I don't want to be redundant because I think you'll probably receive my emails that I sent. My main concerns were about runoff onto my property into the creek and the forested area surrounding. It sounds like, I mean, I think it was a wonderful presentation that you guys gave. As a bleeding heart environmentalist, basically myself, I can't in good conscience protest this project, even though it's going to be in my backyard. I don't necessarily want it as close as it's going to be to my property, but it is certainly something that I cannot object to morally or ethically. I think it's a great thing to have in the area. Yeah, my main concern, again, is any potential runoff, air pollution, noise pollution. Yeah, I think you guys answered most of my questions. And in my email, I do note that we have documented and witnessed on many occasions a nesting a pair of great horned owls in the woods just north of this property. And it's about, from what I can measure, about 200, maybe 250 feet from the property line on the north side of this property. And I have been in contact with the Ohio Department of Natural Resources about designating that area as a protected nesting area for those birds. I don't have enough information about that to say that it will go onto the surrounding properties, but I guess it's a possibility. And I'm not entirely sure how that process works. We're just in the beginning stages of doing that. But I guess my main concern would be not necessarily during the operations of this facility, more of the construction of it, how close it is to my property line, and specifically the north side, how close it is to that birding nesting area, and what sort of impact that could have on that or disturbance. And I have to say, I'm pretty appreciative of, from what I could see, it seems like they're not going to be clearing a whole lot more of the forest. I was concerned initially when they started doing that last year that they would be clearing the entire area, but it looks like they're almost done doing that. So I can't complain about that. It did look like on one of the overhead views that they were closer to my property line than the recommended 300 feet. I think that was part of what the committee suggests, or I don't know if they require it. I know that you can grant, exceptions to that. I don't, I'm not going to object to that necessarily. I know the facility is the size that it has to be, and it has to fit on that plot of land. To me, as long as you're not clearing any more of that forest, I'm not going to object to that either. But yeah, and as the surrounding property owner and potentially a resident, I may eventually live on the property. I do, I don't know if there's any other residents here that are going to speak in opposition. I certainly respect their views and their concerns, and just want to be cautious with this project moving forward. But thank you.
Before you go, ma'am, ma'am, just speaking as a fellow, conservationist, restorationist, I combed through that wasn't shown up here, but their landscaping plans. They actually, they're planting several native species of trees.
I saw that, yeah, that's
But
nice.
also, they're planning on, open areas will be planted with native meadow essentially,
Yeah.
which would help with the habitat of
That's
the
wonderful. Yeah,
owls.
I'm certainly, yeah. I think that all looked great. I have no opposition to that.
That was certainly a huge, like, relief for
Yeah,
me.
and I've only converted currently about 2 acres to meadowland so far on our property. And I already, just in the last year, saw there was a huge migration resting area for what are they? Monarch butterflies. There were hundreds of them on my property, just on a 1 to 2 acre part of it. So I know even a small amount of that land, and that's what I'd like to do.
Just my little backyard.
Yeah, that's also what I'd like to do in the future is open my property up to the public to kind of educate about land conservation, planting native plants, and just what you can do even on a small plot of land.
Well, best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there is anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward and identify yourself and also confirm that you have been sworn in.
I have not been sworn in.
You solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give before this commission shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes. Hey guys, my name is Matt Thorpe.
Sir.
Yeah, Matt Thorpe. I live at 4731 Eck Road, Middletown, Ohio, across the river. I'm more here for my parents who live on Todd Hunter Road, 6245 Todd Hunter Road. Mostly just because of my experience and expertise. I'm a process engineer, chemical engineer. Actually, for the first 10 years of my career, I worked at Cleveland Cliffs, AK Steel. I was in charge of basically all the water in and out of the plant for the last 10 years, including deep well injection into geotechnical surveys, which you guys talked about as well. And now I work for a centralized wastewater treatment plant up in Dayton. So mostly, really, I just have a bunch of questions that I'd like to get answered, and I have some concerns, basically, just that I want to make sure that we're, I guess, thinking about. My first question, obviously, was odor control. This process is very, you're taking organic food, right, rotting food. Everybody knows what that smells like. Mixing it with cow manure, heating it. You have a boiler, obviously. You got a boiler to heat the tanks, or thermal fluid, one of the two. You're going to heat it, you're going to mix it, put it in a big, nasty, heated blender, right? And you're going to collect it all in these digestion tanks, right? And then introduce bugs, which also stink. And I get the odor control system is going to work, right? I assume it's a scrubber. It's not a thermal oxidizer, and you have a flare. Obviously, you're burning other gases, right? And my big question is, is that odor control system on a backup generator or UPS with an automatic switch? If you lose power, which happens, I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 times a year, what happens, right? Where do those gases go? Do they seal off? Do you have fail-close valves that isolate the tanks? I'd look in the general direction, really. Anybody can answer that. But so that's kind of my first question. At the loss of power, loss of steam, whatever, what have you, what happens to the odor control system? And connected to that are the digestate tanks also connected to the odor control system? I know that we said in the presentation that, they typically don't stink as bad, right? I've been doing this my whole career. No matter what byproducts you make, it's gonna stink at some point or to some extent, right? And the digestate tanks are, correct me if I'm wrong, 255 foot in diameter, 35 feet high, which is 13 million gallons of digestate apiece. That's 26 million gallons of digestate. Are those connected to the odor control system or the sealed piping that you're gonna flare, right? Are you gonna get rid of all those vapors or all those odors? And if they're not, you obviously have to have a conservation vent or a breather vent or a PRV, because as you fill the tanks, you have to exhaust the air inside of the tanks, or else you're going to pressurize the tanks, right? So that's also 26 million gallons of air that you've got to exhaust. Obviously not all at once and over time, right? But you're exhausting digestate concentrated air that's sealed in this tank. So every time you fill it, you're exhausting it. You have to, unless it's controlled under the odor control system. which I've worked around those. We have an regenerative thermal oxidizer at the plant I work at right now, which basically pulls all the air, with an induced draft, and then burns it through combustion chambers to remove all VOCs, because we work in a residential area as well. So if that's the case, what inches of water column are you pulling? Are you pulling 1, 1.5, 3? Do you have magnet helix to, at the end of the line to ensure that you're getting constant vacuum on the entire line? Because that's possible that you could, the scrubber might look like it's working properly, but if you go to the end of the line, you smell stuff, well, maybe you've got a problem, maybe you've got a leak, and you're pulling air, before it gets to the digestion or the digestate tanks. There's obviously a long run there. It's like 1/4 mile of pipe if that's the case, if it is connected to your odor control system. So there's a lot that can go wrong, I guess, and I'm really curious about how that's managed. And I'm perfectly fine with the right answer, you know what I mean? Like, they're all connected to the digestate tanks. We're pulling 3 inches water column. We're qualified, or we're required in our permit to check magnet helix once every month or whatever. I don't know what that permit looks like for them. But really, I just want to know those answers. And also with the digestate tanks, and again, I'm mostly asking about the digestate tanks because my parents live at 6245 Todd Hunter, which arguably, in my opinion, is probably the most affected residential house that's being affected by this project, residential-wise, not obviously not a farm. But is there I know the permit hasn't been submitted or approved yet, but is there a secondary containment required for those digestate tanks? And I believe Ohio EPA regulations is 110% of capacity of your largest tank, which would be a 14.5 million gallon secondary containment system. I've heard, I'm not for sure, but somebody told me it was 10% of all the combination of volumes for the tanks, which would be 2.6 million gallons for secondary containment. Anyway, just details, semantics or whatever. But I would like to know if there's a secondary containment, because to answer your question, I believe, what accidents can happen. An environmental spill is a very real thing that can happen. And I don't know the impact of digestate on the environment, right? But a secondary containment wall would prevent that, and Ohio EPA will recognize that as a proper containment system, right? So I'd like to know that answer. My next question would be, by the way, I'm firing these off. I assume that's how this is going to work, right?
Yeah, you can feel free to continue.
Yeah.
We'll take notes. I'm certain the applicant is as well. And once we close the public hearing, we can give them an opportunity to answer these.
Got it. Okay. The digestate tanks are 35 feet high, I believe. That's pretty tall. Will the proposed vegetation on the south side on Todd Hunter Road adequately screen or adequately mask basically the view of the plant? I haven't really done a whole lot of research into their vegetation plan, but I do know that there's like a 40-foot gap right now that you can see right in there, and it looks like their vegetation plan is mostly on the sides, the exterior, and so that kind of leads me to my next question is, there's no entrance there for incoming trucking, but is there a access point there for like maintenance? Are you going to drive your trucks around and in? Or for the power lines, obviously there might be maintenance that needs to happen where you need access on that south side. Are you going to access everything just strictly from the north plant and coming down, or is there going to be an opening there that we can all look through and see a massive 13 million gallon tank, or is the vegetation going to be enough to basically mask it? Which I think is a valuable piece of information if there was a gap, right? And then my last question, obviously, this nice gentleman brought up that most of the plants that they have built have been on dairy farms, right? Is this, I assume you have other plants in residential areas. I guess my question really is there data on the impact of house value around those plants, right? And I agree, this is a great, listen, I've been doing wastewater treatment my whole career, and I agree with everything. The operation is clean, right? We're making methane. We're making money off of what we're sending back into the environment, right? We're cleaning up the food waste, cleaning up the manure. I get it, right? I'm all for it. Really, my concern is, can you see it and can you smell it, right? And we all know the impact. Anybody that's been around Middletown, right? I worked at Cleveland Cliffs for years. Grew up around this whole area. I was here when Suncoat got put in. We all know the impact of industrial, installations around residential areas. Anybody with one eye can see how much all the residential areas around Cleveland works, or I'm sorry, Cleveland Steel's Middletown works. We all can see how much that's impacted, right? So my concern is, will we see it and will we smell it, right? Which will devalue residential areas, particularly the ones closest to the plant. And even if that answer is no, right, you will not see it and you will not smell it, will the public perceive it that you can see it or smell it? Or will this essentially devalue the housing values of residential areas just because it's there, right? And so I'd like to see any data that they have. I don't know if they have any data, but it would be nice to know because, we've got some very real decisions to make about if they should move, if we should move, right? Or what to do about the property and surrounding areas. And I think it's just really, it'd be nice to know what we can expect there, right? And then the last thing I'll say, I guess, is, I think it's great that Middletown would be doing this, right? Middletown's a very industrial city, but all the residential areas that are being impacted by this project are Monroe, right? So this is a Monroe Local School District adds value to the home, right? Being in Monroe adds value to the home, even though the address is a Middletown post office box, right? It's all Monroe, really. And so all the residential areas that I can see, in my opinion, are Monroe. So I guess I don't really know where I was going with that, but you guys understand what I'm saying, is that I agree with Middletown doing this, but I think that needs to be taken into consideration, that the value of the homes could be very heavily impacted just because it's also Monroe, right? And so I guess that's it. That's what I got. So thanks.
Thank you, sir.
If there's anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward, identify yourself, and confirm that you have been sworn in. If there's anyone else wishing to speak in opposition, please come forward. All right, just to confirm with council and staff, am I good to, should I close the public hearing before we have the applicant come back up, or keep it open so that they can come back up?
I'll probably have the applicant come back up, respond to the questions, and then close the public hearing after that.
Very good, thank you.
I think the applicant's response should be confined to responding to the questions.
Very good. All right, if no one else is wishing to speak in opposition, I would invite the applicant to return, and if you would, we would ask you to address some of the questions and concerns as you are able that have been brought up. And if it is at all helpful, I do believe I and my fellow board members have been taking some notes as well, so we may prompt you with some of these questions.
I'm going to start. We'll look to who the right person to answer is. I'm just here to identify the questions as I wrote them down, and then whoever wants to answer them.
Sure.
The first question being the backup generator.
So as far as the backup generator goes, all critical components, which would include the odor control system, run off a backup generator. So anything that's considered critical across the site is connected to it.
Okay.
The protections for the digestate tanks.
So the digestate tanks will be...
Sure. Hi, my name is Sol Luciani, address 133, Boston Pond Road, Western Massachusetts. I was sworn in at the beginning. I'm going to address this slightly different, but the Ohio EPA requires the tanks to be covered and requires there to be some type of air treatment system on the gas that's coming out of the tanks. So that's going to be covered by our permit. There's different options on what can happen with that gas. One is send it to some kind of other control system. Another one is sending it to a flare. We wouldn't be sending it, as he was pointing out, it doesn't make sense to send that to the biofilter up there because of the distance that you have. So In that case, you installed a localized carbon filtering system that is near the tanks instead of installing one up there. I think that covers that question.
Access point for maintenance from the open area.
I can say that. There's also no access from Todd Hunter Road there. And the other thing that I wanted to say when he was talking, or when he was asking before, is the vegetation that we are adding is in addition of what's already there to close the currently open gaps or open areas. So where you see that there's no, there it seems that there's no vegetation in the middle, but you can see the outline of the trees that are already there. So we're trying to cover the areas that don't have anything right now, not leave that gap open.
And then the last question, at least that I have, is there any data on the impact of values on property values?
Yeah, sure. So we have several projects that are, one of them in particular is in a city, full-on city. And then we have a couple others that are in farms but are not completely in rural areas. Majid likes to talk about one in particular that has this destination bakery store that's like 200 feet from the digester. And it's this particular farm that they make their own ice cream and they sell sandwiches and they have cows to show around and whatnot. But we have a digester there also. The other one that I was mentioning is in the city of Haverhill, that's in Haverhill, Massachusetts, and it's in the middle of the city. This is as residential an area as it can be. I think the parcel itself has like 25 or 30 neighbors' houses. And yeah, that one has been in operation since 2017 or 2018. And there has not been any problems or any complaints about odor or anything like that.
Those are the questions that I had, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if I missed something.
Sure.
The access point for maintenance.
Yeah,
She addressed that.
I said that.
Just to add to the access point for maintenance, the electrical access ways, we have been in discussions with Duke Energy, and the pole that would be located along Todd Hunter Road, we have discussed that they would be able to address any service to those poles from Todd Hunter Road, should there need to be any maintenance that occurs to that specific pole. For the remaining poles that would extend north into our site area, they would be able to access from our access ways around the digestate storage tanks.
I have a question. What is the name of the municipality that you have that is not within a township for your digester?
The city of Haverhill, Massachusetts. Haverhill.
Thank you.
I believe one of the questions was potential effects of the I apologize if I'm saying this wrong, the digestate on the environment. So if there was a spill or something, what the effects of that could be?
So the digestate essentially is like, as we've been talking earlier, is super high quality fertilizer. And we've been spreading this on land since, I'll say the earliest one started operating in 2012. And so we've never had any issues related to odor, contamination of land, contamination of groundwater in the 12 plus years that those systems have been land applying that material.
Okay.
And one thing I'd just like to point out is in Massachusetts, the area where these sites are, there aren't large farm fields like there are in Ohio. These are very, very small fields, and they're all surrounded by houses.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One question. So this is actually from the first respondent. There was a question of potential runoff into Dix Creek. Is there any sort of concerns of runoff from this type of operation that you're doing into a waterway?
No, so we're using two sedimentation ponds, or wet ponds rather, to catch the runoff from the facility. I don't believe we catch 100% of the developed area. We're very, very close to that mark. So yeah, we're catching the runoff, we're treating it prior to discharge.
Okay.
I do have a question about the character of these wet ponds. Are they specifically designed with bioremediation in mind, or are they just seeded with local, like, context species of, like, wetland? Well, sorry, I got the words backwards. Wetland species.
Yeah, I would say I wouldn't connect the word wetland to the design. That brings a whole host of.
But it will be constantly wet.
It will be constantly wet, and you can sort of see the contours if you're familiar with reading contours. You can sort of see them on the plan. So you've got a shelf of the pond that's constantly dry, except for after a rain event where it fills up. Then you've got a shelf that is partially safety bench. So if somebody falls in, there's something to land on, and they're not just needing to know how to swim. And then you have a submerged section of that, which is where the vegetation will primarily be that you're talking about. And then you have the deep piece of the pond that actually holds most of the water for most of the year.
My question was, and it's okay if you don't know, are the species being chosen for bioremediation, or are you guys just going to be choosing species that are local to this area? Like, you guys are obviously very environmentally conscious. You're choosing local native species to seed, like the grassland with. But like, since we're talking in this context of like contamination, right? Bioremediation is like the question. Is that something you guys have tried on any other sites? Or is that something that's like kind of a new concept to you, maybe? I don't.
Sure. I don't think I can speak to other sites necessarily. I would say that the design's probably not detailed enough at this point where we've made decisions like that. I don't see any reason why we'd be opposed to it, though. So happy to work with DPW on those details.
Okay. Thank you.
And I apologize, I know it was covered within your presentation. I didn't get the exact figures that were thrown out. Could you just confirm one more time, at least in this preliminary stage, what the sizes are that we are looking at for the storage facilities? Yeah.
So I know in the past the state of Ohio has required us to have 6 months of storage, and so that'd be approximately, call it about 10 million gallons.
Okay.
And so we're not at that point in the design where we've actually sized these, and there's also a good potential that one of these tanks moves off-site out to one of the farm partners that we'll be working with. And what that will do is allow us to utilize backhauls of empty food waste tankers to move that material out to the farm fields throughout the year, so that we're not all moving it during, spreading season, if you will.
Okay.
I do want to just correct one thing since we're on the record.
Please.
State of Ohio requires 4 months of storage. We've provided 6 on the previously permitted sites.
Very good. Thank you for the clarification. One question that I had, this kind of builds off of, I can understand if I was living nearby, concerns regarding odor. I appreciate it does feel like you have addressed a lot of these. One area, just because I want to be clear, when you're first receiving the different waste products, they come in on a truck. What's the process of getting them? So I know everything is happening inside. You got to get from the truck to inside the facility. How does that part happen, and how does that not end up, if I live nearby, am I going to smell when it's going from the truck to your guys' buildings?
So there's 2 ways of receiving material to the site. One is a fully enclosed truck which has like pallets on it or something like that. The building there, the big rectangle on the top, has docks to unload pallets. The building itself is at a slight negative pressure with the biofilter, which means air is always kind of flowing to the biofilter into the building. So when the door is open, there's always air coming from the outside in. That guarantees that there's no odor escaping from the building when you open the door to unload a truck. Those are pallets, so it's basically material that is packaged. So I don't know, a pallet of cans of Coke, even if they go bad, they are still in the pallet, and you're still, they are still enclosed. The other way of receiving material is if you receive liquid. They mentioned before, again, using Coke as an example, flat Coke that comes in a truck, but bulk. In that case, there's a connection on the side of the building that is for a hose, and you connect directly the hose to the building, and it's like a fire cam lock thing. You connect directly to the side of the building and to the truck, and then you start unloading through there. That means that it's also like airtight through the environment. So there's no food waste processing happening outside that building or outside of any of the tanks, which are all enclosed. So that's how we control them.
Understood. Thank you. And just to reiterate too, I think this was something that was mentioned towards the beginning, so just want to make sure the details aren't getting missed or forgotten. You did mention too, as far as noise, definitely lower than any of the other industrial types of processes happening in the surrounding area, correct?
Yeah, we tend to describe the noise of the facility as the humming of a pump, because that's what mainly you have. You might have outside a pump or something like that. We did do noise studies in some of our other facilities, and all those came good, meaning not over whatever the requirement was in that particular place. Yeah, I don't have off the top of my head what the number is,
Sure.
decibel number. I don't have that.
No, that's understandable. All right. Is there anything else maybe that we may have missed from the people who came forward, or any other questions that have come up that you would want to address? Please.
How far is so this picture's up conveniently. How far is the edge of your operations over here from the adjacent property? I think you mentioned it earlier, but I can't remember.
Is this the property then to the west?
Yeah, right. So what I mean is this.
Yeah, so the shortest dimension that we're showing here is 126 feet, and that's from the west property line to the biogas upgrading piece of equipment, sets of pieces of equipment. So if you're looking for the shortest distance, 126 feet.
Right. Okay. This is, obviously we can tolerate some variance, or we have the power to. Is this as far away from the property line as it can possibly be? Is there any way to squeeze this closer? I know in some places there's not actually houses there, it's fields and pastures, but what I'm trying to get at is, are we as far away from the adjacent property owners as we can possibly be?
I would say the answer to that is yes. Just to give you a couple considerations, we are squeezed as tight to the north-south segment of Main Industrial Road as we can get. We're right tight to the building setback there, trying to fit all of our infrastructure in. So I would say the answer is yes. We are, as mentioned, working through facility engineering, or about to jump into that stage. And so I think that we'd look to honor the number that we commit to here. And we feel that we're about as tight as we can get right now.
Thank you. That concludes my super technical line of questioning.
All right. Anything else from the board? Nope. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And I would be remiss if we didn't thank the citizens who spoke, our immediate abutting property neighbor supporting our application, and the other resident, in terms of the level of engagement and understanding of the project. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right. We'll now move to deliberation.
Can you close the public hearing?
Please. I will now close the public hearing. Now we'll move to deliberation.
Well, I thought it was very succinct. The only reason we're here is because this process involves hazardous or caustic materials. If not, other than the excess height for the tanks, which we really don't know what that is right now. Other than that, there wouldn't be a need for a conditional use. So some of these other questions that have been concerns maybe aren't really that relevant to our decision making, because it seems like that our only concern is the nature of the hazardous and caustic materials. And it seems to me there are some caustic, natural gas, obviously I looked up the definition. Hazardous material is anything that can cause harm to people or the environment. So anything possibly could be. Natural gas, it seems like that's fairly well contained. Ferric chloride and hydrogen sulfide, boy, I'm not a chemist, so I don't have a clue as to what.
So the hydrogen sulfide is a byproduct of the manufacturing process, and they detailed systems that they have in place to separate. I don't know if that was a proposed system or not, but there are systems that they are aware of to filter that out. And again, like there's another system that they pointed out where I even made a note where they mentioned that they can filter out the carbon dioxide that's produced through this process and then turn it into like food grade carbonation essentially. So I mean, seems like they've got a pretty good grasp on this system.
Right, right. So it would seem to me that considering that Ohio EPA probably has a stranglehold on these types of operations to ensure that they comply with all of their requirements. I see, to me, it appears to be that it's a justifiable conditional use, I guess subject to the providing of a list of the noxious materials or chemicals used during the manufacturing process and document the safety precautions that will be used to prevent potentially hazardous chemical reactions or contamination, which we've already heard how that's to be done, and maybe it's just a formality that it be provided in writing with this application.
Just one more thing about the hazardous materials. One that we didn't mention was the anti-foam. I think that is the one that is like standing out the most to me, but that is just like a precaution that they have in case, you know, something goes wrong in the process. And as the applicant said, it doesn't seem like they've had to use that at any of their sites in a number of years. I think 7 was the I'm getting nods. So seems like, you know, they have this precaution that they keep on hand. If that precaution, you know, were also to go awry, then you've kind of got some bigger problems, I think. But, you know, if that's really the main thing that's holding us back is the precautionary use of like a, you know, containment measure of some sort, then.
So to refocus the planning commission, the reason that this is before you is because they are producing biogas as a byproduct, but they're still producing it, refining it, and then injecting to a natural gas pipeline on the property. Staff would request that the applicant provide in writing the list of noxious chemicals or matters, including biogas, as well as its expected components to the city, as well as the documented list of precautions that will be used to prevent potentially hazardous chemical reactions or contamination during the conditional use process, as well as reaffirming that during the zoning permit application process for quality check for the city to do our due diligence. So that it is crucial that as part of any review, the conditional use, again, is a review that be provided prior to formal action.
Mm-hmm. So point of clarification then, for this specific instance, this would not be, so correct me if I'm wrong, we could not approve this with part of the condition being that this list of materials as well as the processes and methods for providing for the safety is part of it. That needs to, we have to have that received first before it can be approved.
Yeah, under the code, it's supposed to be submitted as part of the application, so it should be part of what's being reviewed right now, but it's not here right now.
Okay. So just to 100% be clear one more time, because we don't have that cannot be kind of appended on after an approval. You know, because sometimes we say like, assuming someone builds a fence or puts extra shrubbery, you know, we'll give an approval. but this would not kind of fall under that sort of situation then. Am I hearing this correctly?
Yeah, it's not written into the code as something to be done as a condition of approval. It's something to be done to get approval.
Understood, thank you.
I would also say, think about what you're comparing this to. This is noxious matter versus shrubbery or a fence.
Understood. Thank you for that.
Well, I think the conditions seem to suggest tabling this, providing the applicant time to give us the necessary documentation required to move forward with the process. Does that pretty much sum up? Yeah.
Good.
All right. Well,
Yeah, I would encourage the applicants as well, with the public comments received as both tonight and prior to the meeting, to follow up with any constituents, to answer questions, alleviate concerns. I feel personally, if I was a resident, I would feel pretty confident in hearing from you based off of your responses tonight, so I thank you for that. In the meantime, then, do we have any other comments or thoughts? Personally, I just got to say, assuming we are able to get these necessary documents, everything checks out, I would be excited to have them come to town. I appreciate what their business is doing. You know, as someone who is very much not well versed in this realm, I appreciate the explanations of things and comparatively of what could come in within an industrial zone. I do feel too that realistically speaking, for residents nearby, this would probably be more ideal than others too.
I would like to add, since we haven't made a motion yet, but the wind seemed to be blowing towards allowing the applicant more time to refine this a little bit. There is still the open kind of question of the height variance, so I would encourage the applicant to try and clarify that as best as they can, so that next time this comes around, maybe we can get that all wrapped in a bow at once instead of requiring another variance. But yeah, I will make a motion to table this. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Mr. Parsons?
Yes.
To table?
Yes to table.
Mr. Mintel?
Yes to table.
Mr. Daniel?
Yes to table.
Ms. Griffith?
Yes to table.
Mr. Cash?
Yes to table.
Ms. Ramsey? Yes to table. And Mr. Shaneline?
Yes to table.
Very good. That brings us to old/new business. Do we have any items?
I do. I guess mine will be new business. So this is my last meeting, sitting here as a city councilman, as a non-voting member with the City Planning Commission, City Planning Commission. First of all, I want to just thank each and every one of you for volunteering, taking time out of your lives to be the brain trust of City Council. It has been a pleasure serving here, doing this. It's been quite an adventure. A few things that we've done is through the text amendment process. We made homes in Middletown better. We are telling developers that we don't want vinyl on the first floor in an industrial town. And if a developer doesn't want to do that, then let them build someplace else. The cost is not there on a 30-year loan, so they should be able to do that to own the development. We've worked on a lot of developments that continue to grow. If you've noticed on Central, Lincoln Heights, they're starting to move earth. They continue to build on Roosevelt Ridge, and over on Eaton, that process will get started with those 9 condos. So we continue to do that, and even tonight you're looking at 314 units. So we continue to do the fine work here. We also did a text amendment on the recreational marijuana, and we see that we have their second dispensary being built on Verity. And as I've always said about this, because I didn't do this for me, I cannot participate, even if my doctor tells me to, because of two reasons. One, I carry a firearm, and two, OSHA does not like electricians to participate. So this was for folks on a choice. You make that choice. It's like you choose to eat at McDonald's or you choose to eat a salad. It's a choice. But I appreciate that. I also like the fact that we have a lot of diversity here. We have different professions, we have different ages, and this is what we need to be the voice of Middletown, to be again, the brain trust of City Council. And City Council does greatly appreciate everything that you do. I also appreciate that you have your opinions, that you disagreed with me loudly, to the point that Chairman Parsons and AJ came at a public hearing and told me, no, I don't like this, I didn't vote for it, and that's okay. I had my 3 votes, and we did what we had to do. And let me also be very clear about that. Well, let me not jump ahead. Everything that I did, I wanted to do that makes this stronger. And now we have 7 citizens representing City Council. And there was, and if you want to listen to my last 2 speeches, you'll see exactly why I did what I did. But on appointments, think about who we appointed here. We appointed AJ, Gabe, and Tara. Oh yeah, congratulations, Tara, on being on the Middletown School Board. So it wasn't about that. It was about having our citizens being represented here. She's on the school board. She was on the school board. She got voted on the school board. Voted for you, by the way. So it's just a proud moment for me. I will miss this. I'm not going away. I will volunteer, and we'll see if City Council wants me to continue to play in a voting way. But again, I just want to thank you so much for being with me on this adventure. And I'm very passionate, especially when I feel I'm right. And I can have the whole room against me, and I don't care. And if I'm voted down, I'm voted down. If not, 3 votes is all I ever needed, and that's all I got. I also want to thank our city planner and Frostbound and Todd. You are in fantastic hands with these folks. They are thorough, they know it, you're not going to fool them. No innovator developer is going to come into our city and do something without them vetting them and making sure that all the processes are covered. And we learned that at the last meeting when someone tried to come into our city and bring an element that we did not want. And I want you to continue to do that. And I beg you to please continue to question things, to do your research. You are in a rare opportunity here where you get to participate in our ordinance, in our 2-volume, very thick ordinances. So if you think of any text amendment, anything that you want changed, I would do, now is the time, because your voice is going to be heard, and we're relying on you and City Council to do that, because next fall, they're going to vote on it. And then I don't know if it's going to be another 5 or 10 years before they renovate it, re-up it, or what have you. So now's the time of, hey, I really would like this to be in there for the betterment of the company, being the city, or the citizens, or the business leaders, or the innovators, developers in our city. So again, this is my last meeting. I have an appointment in December, so I will not be able to make this meeting. But again, brilliant on the way you do things, the way you table things when we don't have all the appropriate documents, and then give them the opportunity to do again. We've got to see some very cool things with these innovations that are coming into our city. So just again, keep on doing the fine work, and we greatly appreciate City Council. That's all.
Thank you, Councilman.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for serving your city, and I believe I speak for the board when I say we wish you well. Do we have any other old or new business?
Yeah, I just want to also thank Councilman Horn for sitting with us and providing his insight. I know it's been a great 13, 14, 15 months getting to know you. Yes, as for tomorrow with your special meeting, I have heard from 4 of you that you're able to attend, which is great. I'm still looking for the other 3 to confirm if you can attend the study session for the development code update for those first 4 chapters we're releasing for your review and input on.
You got mine right, Claire.
I got Gabe, I got Mr. Mentel, he might be a few minutes late, Mr. Daniel, and I've heard from Mr. Cash twice. So the special meeting is tomorrow in 2C, conference room 2C, so it's on the second floor, that side of the building. The other side is the city manager's wing, you won't be able to get in. So just go to the end of the hallway and then turn right, it'll be on your right side. 6 p.m. I don't know how long it'll last. Hopefully it's not another marathon meeting, but it's really reviewing chapters 202, 1224, 1226, and 1228 of the Middletown Development Code. So that's your general provisions, your nonconformities, review and decision making, I believe, as well as processes, so including conditional use plan development district, and then lastly the penalties section as well as violations. So please review. It's been you received a marked up version. I think there's 7 comments in the margin. So if you open the comments feature on your review tab, you'll see those pop up. But come ready to talk. Conference room 2C is a conference room, obviously. So it's meant to be a bit more interactive, less so me talking at you and you talking at us.
Thank you for the reminder. Anything else for the good of the order? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.